So guys, little announcement from us. We are going to be starting a Patreon page, which is basically asking you guys to support the pod by paying just £1 an episode. So it's £4 a month. It's really easy to set up. The link will be on below. And it's basically us just asking for help. We want to take the pod to the next level. We want to have our own office space. We want to get better cameras. We want to be able to have money that we can bring guests up on trains from further afield. And basically, just take it to the next level. That doesn't mean the pod's going to stop. It's just us asking for a little bit of support and help if you enjoy it.
For just £1 an episode as well. And we've been doing this now a year and a half. Enjoyed every second of it. It's fantastic. And just that £1 an episode will help us so much to get, like Andy said, better equipment, etc. So link is in the bio and all our usual spots. And appreciate all the support for the podcast. It means the world to us both.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. It's about a year and a half now, isn't it?
A year and a half,
yeah. So we start, the very first episode was Andy's doctor who amputated his leg.
Right.
Yeah, my surgeon. He's done like 30 years as a general surgeon.
Oh yeah, really.
So he's got a few stories to tell.
Yeah.
And then
when was that? 3rd of Feb?
Yeah, 3rd of February was my 10-year anniversary from being blown up.
10 years was it? Yeah.
So
how long were you serving before then?
Just short of 7 years.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so served in Iraq and then Afghan.
Yeah.
And then in Afghan, things went a bit tits up and on the wrong end of a bomb.
Terrifying.
But like you say, mate, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's funny, isn't it? How,
yeah, mental when you put it like that, really.
Yeah.
What in what way? Like this, it changed your mindset, or? It's going to be me. It's going to be me. Like, I'm going to be asking questions.
That's what the pod's about, though, isn't it? I just think the people that have come into my life, the opportunities I've had, the lifestyle, the mindset I've got, the view on life, the experience, the perspective.
Yeah.
Everything really, yeah. And I think what would my life have been like then? I might have just been kind of just grinding the days out, just like living, if you like, a normal life. Whereas now I feel a bit woke, like I've seen the light that, you don't have to kind of, life's what you make of it type thing. I maybe wouldn't have had that life experience if it wasn't for.
So it's almost like a wake up of,
I
don't know, you're more in tune with your senses, with your inner senses, with your mindset as well.
100%, yeah.
You realise how precious life is.
Yeah.
My friend had that. He was in a bad car crash. It was 3 people died. He was the only survivor.
Wow.
And how old was he? He was 18 or 19.
Jesus.
And he said that woke him up. That was like, well, life can be taken like that. What's the point in sitting back doing nothing? Let's make something of it.
Yeah.
And he joined up with me on my travels when I first set off at age 19. He's my best mate. He's now working in Hong Kong.
Is he? Yeah.
He's on a super yacht.
Wow.
So he's a yacht master. He just changed his life completely. He was still really young, no real life experience anyway. But it was kind of like that crash just made him think, right, I'm not going to go to university, I'm going to go to
I've seen that with a lot of guys. It was just a generational thing, really. That war in Afghanistan, what would you say, like it transformed a generation of people who were serving at that time, because no one had seen anything like it before. And when I look at that kind of young group of people who were maybe 18, 19, 20, 21, who were seeing the things and experiencing Afghan in that way, they've maybe come out of the Marines after a few years and they're just doing crazy things with their life. Some of them have maybe took it a step further and went on to special forces, and others are kind of again just doing crazy things with their life. And I think it is that down to kind of, I've seen some fucked up shit here, and
well, this
life.
Industry that I'm in, this whole adventure, extreme athlete, explorer sector that I'm in is pretty much dominated with people with military background.
No doubt.
I'm like the only one really, or one of few who was doing this with no military experience.
Well,
really.
I said that to Tom. I said one of the, and again, Tom, you can do a proper intro at the minute because it was your kind of idea to get you on. But one of the things I wanted to say to you first and foremost was, I am just as inspired by your adventures as I am by your attitude, because I just love that kind of, it's similar to what we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
That kind of, why do you have to get a 9 to 5 and work in an office and live for the weekend? Why do you have to live that life? Or I'm just going to go and fucking trek around the world and crack my own and then share that story with people. And it's like, I had this thing with my dad when I was explaining to him about being a speaker, and I think maybe when I was just starting off, and I wasn't quite used to how infrequent it can be. You know, you might work 5 times 1 week, then you might not work for 2 weeks and stuff. And
it's always hit and miss.
It's hit and miss, you know, at times, and getting used to that working for yourself, and which was obviously very different than coming from the military. And my dad kind of said, you know, listen, just fucking get into the real world and just get a normal job, and you know, there's nothing wrong with just fucking. And I get that there isn't nothing wrong with being normal, but for me, I was like, fuck that, I am not doing that. So I love people with, you know, your attitude, which I'm hopefully going to find more out about now, of this kind of, fuck this, man, why can't I make a life for myself where I just go and travel, have adventures, and then share the story?
And it's difficult, but it's doable. And that's the thing. I think it's persistence. I think everyone can start doing one particular thing, but it's whether you can stay the course to find out the real result. I think people maybe quit too soon, you know. So it's all good to be scared because this month you've received this much finance or this many bookings, and then the following month there's nothing. And if you're constantly getting that for a good year or two, you're like, well, this isn't for me. It's easy to back out then. But if you're doing it again and again, and sometimes it takes 5 years, 7 years, 10 years longer, you know. And I've just found with myself, it's persistence is key. You know, and you've got to ride with the emotions as well. You've got to enjoy that journey. Sometimes I'm really bad for that as well. I sort of I'm much better now than when I used to be, but I was just sort of rushing the journey to get where I want to be, type of thing. And same with Mongolia, I sort of was trying to rush that to get to the end to see if I could complete this journey or not. And then Madagascar was totally different. I started to like enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, and I tried to bring that into everyday life, you know, just enjoying the process rather than going at it, and just stay persistent rather than worrying, you know.
100%, mate. We should give you a proper intro. So, thanks so much, anyway, Ash, for coming on, mate.
Can I move this further back?
Of course you can. Yeah.
Lean on the table.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We, mate, I said to you before, like, I just love these sort of conversations. We've been lucky enough to talk to James Kettrell twice, and he's done similar things to yourself. You've, you know, walked across Mongolia, which I was looking yesterday. There's some crazy clips from that. Madagascar, then the whole length of the Yangtze River in China, which I think took you 352 days.
That's right. Yes.
4,000 and something miles, is it?
Yeah, something ridiculous. 4,000 just over.
So, I mean, I literally don't know where to start other than like, how did all this happen then?
Yeah, good question. Well,
and again, it comes back to the same question: is where do you get from getting told, no doubt, oh, you've got to go to college, you've got to then, you know, get a job, to then, like Tom just said, thinking, fuck this, now, you know.
It hit me hard. I would say when I was, I don't know, I guess when I was growing up, there was lots of little things that inspired me to want to take the travel route, you know, whether it was people's stories or whether it was certain books or photos or even David Attenborough documentaries, you know, on TV.
He inspires everyone, David Attenborough, to be fair.
Gets to us all. And I was just kind of like, you know, I don't want to be sitting down watching this. I want to create my own stories, my own experiences. But again, you know, a normal guy, normal upbringing, the coast of North Wales there. And this idea at that stage, when I was 16, to travel the world just seemed overwhelming. You know, I'd never been on a plane alone. I'd only done family holidays. You know, 16-year-old teenager hasn't really done much at that age. And I remember thinking, you know, if I can break my goals down into manageable tasks. My dad helped me with that. My mum and dad have always been very supportive in terms of mindset. You know, for finance, they said you've always got to work hard and make your own money. Find whatever job you can, and I did. You know, I was working at a fish and chip shop. I was working as a waiter. I was then working as a lifeguard. I was saving up the money, and then I was writing down my goals and what I needed. I just wanted to get out there and see the world because I knew that I was more of a kinesthetic learner.
Yeah,
you know, from my hands-on practical. I'm not the guy that can really sit in the classroom and have the teacher tell me about their knowledge or their experience. That's a great way, and if you can learn that way, awesome. But for me, I just couldn't learn that way. You know, I was unfortunately, I need to make the mistakes and learn the hard way to learn in the first place. You know, and that was just the way I worked. And so I was doing my college course after school whilst I was saving up the funds.
All just saving up the funds just to travel.
I was looking at certain qualifications to get maybe skiing or snowboarding instructor, and then I realised that I wanted to do my scuba diving, because there's more opportunities for work. You don't have to follow the winter season.
Sure, yeah.
You can always find work somewhere. And I just liked the idea of scuba diving as well. And it was cheaper, a lot cheaper, because I could do that in Wales. So yeah, 17, I started scuba diving. And that was all about sort of investing in myself. I knew that it was great to go traveling, but I also knew that money would run out. And once I've had my year travel experience, I'm going to come back home. Everyone would have moved on with their lives, with their careers. My friends would have been like, I told you so.
Yeah.
My friends, you know, they did support me, but at the same time, they were kind of like, yeah, but what then? I was this sort of young, I'm going to trek the Great Wall of China. I'm like, yeah, well, what are you going to do after that? I'm going to do like the world's highest bungee jump. I'm going to eat tarantula, do all of this crazy stuff, learn how to survive in the jungle. And they're like, that's great, but what then? You know? And I was like, shit, yeah, what then? And so,
like, so many people, like so many parties, like, you know, family events.
Yeah.
I remember having like similar sort of ambitions, and they go, yeah, but what are you actually going to do?
Yeah.
You know that, like,
yeah, right,
all right, you're going to go travelling, but like, what is it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which, you know,
It's a society problem, that though, isn't it? Because it's almost like, yeah, but then you've got to have a family at some point, and you've got to have a mortgage at some point, and then you've got to get but why?
There's these set things that society have given us that we must do by certain ages, and everyone's different. We're all different.
Yeah.
You know? And that's sort of old school now, isn't it?
That takes some confidence at that age to just think, well, you know, I'm gonna kind of crack on and go anyway.
Yeah, and it was a risk, you know. My friends were going to. I think I was the only one in my college course. There was only 15 of us doing the outdoor education course, and I think I was the only one not going on to either the military or university afterwards.
Really?
And so that was a bit of a scare as well. But at the same time, I was like, you know, sort of risk nothing, gain nothing. Let's see what happens. So I was immature. I was doing these reckless things, but it was all very, very well planned out in terms of the scuba diving. I was gaining those qualifications so that when I do travel, I can work and actually top up the funds, so I don't necessarily need to come back to the UK. You know, I could maybe climb the rankings, I could maybe be course director, I could maybe open up a dive school, I don't know. I just wanted to get those scuba diving qualifications so I could find work abroad. And yeah, you know, 2 years later, age 19, my friend as well joined me that I told you about, who was also a lifeguard, and he was in a nasty car accident. He also said that, you know, life can be taken so fast. Let's enjoy it. And I said, man, more than welcome to join me on the travels. He started saving as well, and off we went, both age 19, you know, still teenagers, on this flight going to Beijing City in China.
And what was the goal for this particular trip? Just to travel? Just
to travel. So this was a 4-year plan. It changed massively, but it was a plan of traveling around Southeast Asia, working and living in Australia for a year on the holiday working visa, and progressing on our scuba diving qualifications, then working again in New Zealand, and then going over to Africa, South America, North America, Canada, and then whatever the hell happens after that, pretty much. That was our 4-year plan, and we had it listed out. I had this, I didn't know it was a thing back then, but it's a you know, what's it called, the mind map?
Yeah.
It is the
no, it's
dream board. Is it the dream board?
It's it's a something board. Yeah, I suppose it is a dream board.
It's a dream board, isn't it? And
I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
Map, I had the route.
Vision board, is it?
Vision board.
Both same thing, I guess. Yeah.
And I had these photos of the travels just ripped out from magazines.
Mate, they work them though. I think I used to have a treadmill in my gym.
Well.
Yeah, and I had when I was trying to break my world record, I had the time 37.53, which was the current record, in front of the treadmill.
Wow.
And I just used to run on this treadmill looking at 37.53.
Looking at that number.
And that was
Fixated,
it. And it worked.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
It seeps in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It seeps in. It allows you not to forget why
exactly,
you're running, you know, why you're training. And that's what I wanted. I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd get on my bike, because I now sold my car, cheap little naff Renault Clio. Got rid of that car, bought myself a bicycle for, I don't know, £50, £60, something like that, and started cycling every day to lifeguarding in the rain. Have you been to North Wales?
Yeah, many times. Yeah.
The wind is a nightmare, is it? All the time. It was like I was constantly cycling against the wind. But yeah, ready to be lifeguarding at 5 a.m. So when I woke up first thing in the morning, it was that sort of vision board, you know, with all of these pictures, with the world map, with all of these quotes, and I just stuck to it for those 2 years. And then finally set out with the idea that I wanted to go travel, because I realised I was that kinesthetic type of learner. I would learn from different people, different cultures. I'd learn different sort of traditions. I'd be developing my maths, because I'd be now dealing with different currencies. I'd be developing my English, because I'd be now having to email I would type up professional looking emails, and I just would know more about myself, how I handled certain situations, and knew that I would grow and develop so much more through travel than for me any other way. So that was exciting as well. And the world's a big place, you know. Got to get out and see it.
Mate, I did a similar thing. Like literally Southeast Asia.
Quality places,
mate, it's just Thailand is like I literally like did everywhere in Thailand, and it just changes your worldview on things. It changes like the fact that, you know, I remember like having like literally no money and thinking like, fuck, what are we gonna do? You know, like, and just so right, okay, so what do I need to do? I need to figure this out. I need to find somewhere to exactly, and confidence and finding ways, and you know, the language barrier is a problem, like everything. I think every 18, 19, I did it when I was 20. I think everyone should do that sort of travel for as long as they can.
Sure.
Just to change that worldview and see how different economies work, see how different countries work. You might decide actually Thailand's a place for me. I want to spend the rest of my time in Thailand or wherever. It's such an important thing to do.
You'll just learn more about yourself as well, won't you? Like just going straight up to strangers and asking questions. When you're a teenager, it's not really something you do, or if you do and you get rejected or something, your friends are there pointing laughing at you.
Exactly,
you know, whereas out there in the real world, it happens on a daily basis, and you're just getting yourself out your comfort zone, and you learn more about yourself, and it just opens up so many opportunities. Even when it comes to jobs and careers, you know, the school system's a great system, but there's only a number of opportunities presented. And then when you go traveling, you realize how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of different occupations and jobs there are that you never even heard of.
It's that thing, isn't it? Like if you just grow up, for example, where I grew up not far from here in Bootle, like if someone said to me, you know, you could be a scuba diving instructor, I probably wouldn't have even have believed that's a thing. You know, you can teach people to scuba dive, or you want to,
and that's your job.
You just wake up every day and teach people, and you can do that. Or like someone had said to me, you know, there's like a you know, there's a place where you can look after injured elephants in bloody Thailand. That's a job? Well, you can do that if you want. You'd be like, what really?
It's mad, isn't it? It is mad. And you don't really, unfortunately, discover this until you're older. Or normally, you know, when you do discover all of these things, you're already set
in your ways,
finishing a degree and what you want to pursue as a job or career, which isn't a bad thing.
I think socially as well, I've noticed it now. I think just because, again, through travelling, through worldly experience, now I feel, and obviously age, I think it comes, but I notice myself, if I speak to younger people, maybe in a bar or something, I've got 2 younger sisters, and maybe speaking to even guys in their early 20s, and they've got this thing where whether it's low confidence, but they're not really making eye contact and they're shuffling away, and you think I think if I maybe spoke to maybe one of you at 2021, you maybe hold a better conversation. But I think a lot of society now, younger people, whether it's to do with being on your phones all the time on social media, but I find a lot of people haven't got that confidence of, you know, speaking to people. And like you say, if you're 20, 21 in Thailand, you've got to look at someone in the eye and say, excuse me, can you do this? Can you do that? Whereas if you've lived at home all your life and your mum and dad's, and someone speaks to you and asks you a question, you're like, you know what I mean? It's, 100%, I've noticed that a lot, I think, in society. It should be like some sort
of initiation test where the coming of a 19-year-old, they must be sent to some sort of random country and fend for themselves for like a month, and then they'll come back up and they'll appreciate it. You know?
But when you're travelling as well, if you see someone who's on their own, like I've seen so many people on their own in hostels, and they're so confident because they don't want to be on their own for 4 months, 5 months.
It's like they have to be.
So like they'll come down and like, even, you know, I love that confidence of like, if we were just sat at a table here in a bar and some guy just came up, do you mind if I sit with you? Do you know, like that sort of like 100%. Confidence to do that?
I had it when I went, and I went to an ex-girlfriend went travelling, I went to visit her, and again I come from that maybe narrow-mindedness of just maybe keeping myself to myself, and I think she was maybe in the room getting a shower and I was down at breakfast, and you know, a young guy done that to me. He sat down and went, and I was like, you know, didn't really know what to do because I wasn't used to that kind of. And it's great to see,
so
isn't
true,
it?
Isn't it? Yeah. And it is great.
You think they're a bit strange, don't you? You think, why would you want to sit with it? But like, you just, you know, but it's so important that like that confidence. And,
it is.
Mate, I love Thailand. I absolutely love doing that.
It's awesome, isn't it? It's cheap, cheerful, the land of smiles. You can do everything and anything there, and there's no health and safety, which I love.
Yeah. My favourite place was Pai. Have you been to Pai?
Yes.
Yeah, I
in
love
2010
Pai.
I was in Pai.
Well, yeah.
2012,
11 or 12, yeah. Pai's gorgeous, isn't it, around
so
there?
cool.
Just a bit further north than Chiang Mai, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. It's like 80 kilometres away, isn't it? We rented our little mopeds and got ourselves over there. And it was a guy that we met in China, actually, that he got this map he did. He sort of drew Thailand, and he said that it's a place no one really goes to. Apparently it's like quite touristy now, but in 2010 it wasn't so bad, more locals than Westerners. And he pointed it out, just wrote Pai, and that instantly excited me because it reminded me of The Beach, the movie. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
When they give a map of this hidden paradise island, I was like, I've got to go there.
Oh, it's gorgeous, Pai. Yeah, absolutely cracking place.
It is.
And I feel it seems like that sort of place is where a lot of, I suppose even more when you went, is you get the sort of individuals like yourself who, are outgoing. It's that sort of place. I feel.
It is. It is
really.
Yeah, it's quite a hippie place, isn't it?
It is.
Almost,
really hippie place. Yeah. Really.
We came across a local on the outskirts, slightly further out of Pai, and he was just this sort of bushman, really, a Thai bushman. Had this sort of bandana, looked like a Thai Rambo, had this bandana wrapped up, had a machete in his hand. He'd just come back from the jungle. We got talking to him. He was all right at English, and he pretty much said that there's a Burmese hill tribe looking to migrate over to Thailand via the jungle because there's no border control. Do you want me to take you there for a little bit of money? And me and my friend, like if a wild man with a machete invites you into the jungle, you tend to say no. But again, we were like, what a different experience. And we said yes, and he took us into the jungle. We were there for about 3-4 days. He was teaching us how to survive. Yeah, little berries off the bush that act as mosquito repellent, what to hunt, what to gather, how to build rafts or shelter using natural resources. We then made it to this Burmese hill community, and they were just living out there. They weren't like tribal, like with their spears. They still had their rifles for the squirrel shooting out the tree, but they were pretty much migrating. So we crossed. Probably shouldn't be saying this on camera, but we pretty much crossed illegally with no visa because there's no border control into Myanmar in 2010 when it wasn't open to any Westerners. And it was an awesome experience. And I do sometimes think, wow, if I just said, for me and my friend, said no, sort of laughed and remember that. Yeah. It would just be a story. Remember that wacky man that invited us in the jungle, bandana, machete.
That's awesome, that.
We went for it.
Isn't it funny how if you were walking down the street to Liverpool and a lad come up to you in a North Face tracksuit with a machete and went, "Hey mate, do you want to come and live on this council estate for a couple of days?" And you'd be like, "Fucking no chance, mate."
Out there with you, Jesus, mental.
So where did you stay then? Just in the forest, yeah.
Yeah, we just hacked down bamboo. Just bamboo. We got banana leaves. We were our bedding. Banana leaves were also our roof. We sort of thatched this roof where it was on a slant because it was slightly rainy as well, so it would just run off. Set up the fire for the smoke to clear away the mosquitoes, and we would catch anything we could find, hunt it or gather it and eat it. And it was awesome. And I remember on night one, I remember waking up and I was uncomfortable. There was insects everywhere. There was sort of ants marching up on the ridge of my bedding, which was a banana leaf, so it was marching up on the banana leaf ridge. And I remember thinking, wow, this is uncomfortable. By night 3 or 4, I remember waking up because the big ants and they're marching down. I remember waking up and I felt one with nature pretty much. I thought this isn't a scary place to be if you know what you're doing, if you know what to watch out for, and know what to look for, edible wise, know what's poisonous and know what's not harmful. It's an all right place to live. And these guys, for the Burmese hill tribe, that's their home, And I remember just looking, I thought, well, they're not asked about me, they're just sort of using my bedding as a sort of shortcut, if you like, or maybe I've put my bedding in their space, and I just went back to sleep. And I think that I was age 19, that was almost that sort of transition of start to become comfortable with the uncomfortable, that saying. And that was probably the first time that I experienced that.
What an experience at such an age. That is just mega.
Cool. Just a teenager, just out there, still spotty, still messy, just like this.
How did you find that point? I always remember vividly in kind of Afghanistan, it being like so all throughout Royal Marine training, when you were on exercise and you were cold, wet, tired and hungry, and you always thought that although it was an exercise and it didn't have dangers to it, but it was hard, and you always knew that if anything really bad happened, the sergeant major or the officer in command could say, right, that's it, end X, call a helicopter in, someone broke a leg or something, and you've got that safety net. And then it suddenly kind of falls, when you get on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, if the shit hits the fan, there's no one who's going to go, okay, stop this, it's real life, Did you ever have a point where you're thinking, okay, this is a cool adventure, I'm 19, this will be funny, we'll follow this wild guy, and then you think, actually, if the shit hits the fan, no one fucking knows where I am, or, did you ever get that? Because I always remember in Afghanistan thinking, like, if something goes wrong, like, we are fucked. Like, we are in the middle of nowhere, and help is maybe 45 minutes away or something, and that's if it comes. And I don't know,
I know what you mean.
There's that weird feeling of knowing that things you're uncomfortable, and it's not ideal, but you're in this kind of controlled atmosphere and surroundings, whereas you're uncomfortable and dangerous, but it's not controlled. It's like anything can fucking happen.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess even if I thought that they turned, we had no good possessions worth taking anyway. We left most of the stuff in Pi and left with a little rucksack. So when we were with them, it's a case of, even if they did turn against us, one, we're screwed. But two, we wouldn't have even really been able to find our way out of the jungle. It took us a couple of days to get to them, and it was through all sorts of crazy terrain, up mountains, the lot. And I guess it did cross my mind of like, imagine if this was like one big setup, because that has happened many times before, hasn't it? You hear stories, you see movies based on true stories and whatnot. But at the same time, I guess I have this.
It's exciting as well.
Yeah, I think I've got like a major trust or faith in humans as well. Probably more so than most. And I've just found that, if anything, that's served me well rather than gone against me. I guess on these, like yourself, how you said at the beginning, you love meeting new people. I'm the same, and I guess the more people I met and I realised that they're decent and genuine, I sort of started to flush out the negative thoughts on people and some bad, dark stories that you do hear. It's easy to eradicate that and hold the positives. So I guess maybe I had too much trust. Who knows?
No, but that's an awesome thing. I've seen a video, I think Tony Robbins talks about it, and he does this exercise, and he says, you'll find what you're looking for. So if you're looking for the bad in people, you'll find bad in people. If you're looking for the good in people, you'll find that. He does an exercise, and he says, everyone close your eyes, and when you open them, look for like as many brown things as you can. So people do this exercise, and then he says, right, close your eyes, and then he says, how many red things did you see? And people say like none, and then he says, right, close your eyes again, open them, how many red things did you see? And then suddenly they can see like 10, 15 red things. And it's like, and now you're almost, not only did you see more red things second time round because you were looking for them, you're almost then having an argument with yourself, and you're saying, well, was that brown, or was it kind of burgundy? Was it kind of and now you're trying to justify that it wasn't actually brown, but it was red. And it's your mind looking for things that it wants to see. And I think that's just so right with people. If you go into stuff thinking these are gonna fucking kill me, these are gonna fucking,
and that's just primal, isn't it? That's proper primal, and we've still got that in our DNA, and we can't really get rid of that. I think that's the stuff that we need. It keeps us alive, but it's stuff that we need to learn to control and keep at bay at the same time, isn't it? Because we don't necessarily need it in this. Not as much as we used to when we would come across like another tribal community that would fuck you up. And I guess from what we evolved, 2.5 million years, for example, and we were coming across different type of human species, and I guess we've always had to have a small circle, and it's a case of never trust anyone. But then even when you're younger, don't say hello or take anything from strangers. So I guess it's built into us from a young age, and then it's a case of eradicating a sensible amount as you grow and develop. You can't be that unlucky one that does get hit hard. But I guess it's got to stay positive, and not judge, I guess, isn't it?
That's a hard thing, judging. What was your first ever? Was it Mongolia that you did first?
Mongolia was the first big one. But there were lots of previous adventures, lots of reckless adventures as well.
I like the sound of that.
Like that one with the Burmese hill drive. But the first one, I'd say, like the catalyst was when we were in China. We first arrived there, as I said. We arrived there. It was awesome. We were doing the Great Wall. We were soaking up the local culture. But we found we were very much on the beaten track. And I don't know, me and my friend just had something against being on the tourist route. You know, we didn't have no Lonely Planets because we didn't want to read anyone else's experiences. We wanted to create our own, even if it turns out we can't find the place to be or a decent hostel. And so we were all about that. And I found we slipped onto that track. You know, we were sort of in China, but I was with lots of Westerners, which was fine because it meant that we met people from around the world. But I wanted to meet the Chinese people. I'm in China to get to know their way of life.
That's a big statement, that, because again, I've done a bit of travelling, and you look at the Lonely Planet, and it's so tempting to go, oh, this is the place where everyone goes, or this is the club, this is the club,
and it helps. And now I probably would, if I'm there for 2 weeks, I want to make the best out of those 2 weeks, go to the places that are worth going to and avoid those places where aren't worth going to. But back then, because I was 19, I was sort of like, yeah, let's do different stuff, let's get our own photos, let's create our own experiences, let's make our own stories type of thing. And so we went out there with nothing really, and we just spoke to locals along the way, or tourists as well, who would help. And like that guy who drew the map of Thailand, this is Pai, you want to get yourself here, and that led to that Burmese hill tribe experience, which is mad. If I just ignored that, then I would have missed out on something potentially a little bit life-changing. And so when we left China and went to Thailand and then over to Cambodia, me and my friend had spent more money than we anticipated on spending.
Standard.
I think we had got the currency wrong as well, so it was a case of, I think we like by half. I think it was like, wow, this is a cheap beer, it's only 50p, but it was a quid. But then when it comes to the elephant Mahou training, we thought it was 50 quid, but no, it's 100 quid. So we messed. I don't know how we even messed up there. Just young and stupid, I guess, you know. And then we corrected that.
And there's beer involved, that's allowed.
Well, beer. There you go. Yeah, and we were on that scene, you know, the whole nightlife, the party scene, because that's part of the experience as well.
Of course, yeah.
So it was sort of like adventure, danger, and wild nights. You know? And it was when we were in Cambodia that I said to my friend, you know, we've spent a lot of money and we've not really done any adventures. I think Great Wall of China was good, but we're on a tour bus, you know, with lots of other people doing a section that is walked all the time type of thing. It's like, what can we do that's different? What can we do that we said we would do when we were back at home planning for these travels in the first place? And because of the lack of funds, we wanted to go for a cycle, but we couldn't afford no good kit. So I said, look, we were sulking actually on the Mekong riverbank in Cambodia. We both just sat there, you know, like, oh, come on, what can we do? And then I said, let's purchase the cheapest, most ridiculous bicycles we can find, and let's cycle Cambodia the entire length of Vietnam. Let's see what happens once we make it up north of Vietnam. And he sort of laughed and he said, you know, that sounds cool actually, but on what bikes? And as he said that, again, we were on the Mekong riverbank. We heard these screeching sort of noises behind us. We're like, the fuck is that? We turned around and it was this sort of skinny, small, frail old lady cycling on her little bicycle, and it was making all sorts of screeching noises. It was rusty, it was hideous, but it was great because it was cheap. And I said, let's get 2 of those bikes and let's do it. Let's cycle Cambodia and Vietnam on those bikes. And we did. The next day we found bikes that cost us about £10 each.
Jesus.
They had no gears, no suspension, no, we didn't take no pump, we didn't have no puncture repair kit. We had a tent that we found out the hard way wasn't waterproof at all. We found string on the side of the road that we used to strap our rucksack onto the back of the bike. I remember we had to hammer things in place because the rack wasn't quite fitting. A little basket on the front, a pink bell, ding ding, and off we went.
Off you went.
No electronics. In fact, we went on Google using an internet cafe where you put the 10 baht or whatever the currency in Cambodia was into the computers, and it allows you like 10 minutes access. We just got Vietnam, and we wrote down in Vietnamese. We were just sort of copying or tracing or something different town names that we wanted to come across in order to get to Hanoi, the capital, further up north. And that's all. We would just cycle, and we would like come across roundabouts and hey, you know, Hanoi. And they were just going like Hanoi, and it was like over 1,130 miles that we were cycling with just a piece of paper that got battered. And
how far? Sorry, what?
1,130 over that.
You got that way on this bike?
On these bikes
without Google Maps, sat nav,
with nothing, just a piece of paper,
and asking where Hanoi is,
and using the locals. Yeah, the locals are legendary. You know, really hospitable.
Did you start in Phnom Penh? Did you?
We started in Phnom Penh. We went from Siem Reap. We went in Phnom Penh, bought the bicycles, and then we left from Phnom Penh to Saigon.
So
and then Ho Chi Minh. Then across the whole length of the Vietnam to Hanoi. The bikes broke, 17 times in total. Again, I didn't have no pump, as I said, no puncture repair kit, but we relied on the locals. The locals were so handy; they'll fix anything. If you think it's absolutely done, give it to a Vietnamese. They'll show you it's still got long
This is just
left.
astonishing. I just literally, I've just felt my jaw drop then when you said. I thought you were going to say like 100, 200 miles. Like,
yeah, no, it was the full shebang.
That is mental. Mate, it just.
Like even up the mountains, because we had no gears, we had to sometimes get off because I think the pedals fell off like 8-9 times. So we would be cycling and the pedals would just drop off the bike. They would just fall off the bike. Jesus,
it makes me feel so lame. And this is why I love the podcast, by the way, because I love just speaking to people and hearing crazy shit like that.
Yeah,
it makes me feel though so lame. If I go to bloody, I don't know, like it's something I'd put in on my iPhone. Oh, let's go get you. Like I'm going like 4 miles down the road and I need a sat nav to get there. And you hear a story about a 1,000 over.
I guess that's because we're all about timing now, isn't it? We want to be at a certain place. Whereas me and my friend, well, at that point, I'd get to why we started to rush towards the end. But at that point, we had nothing but time. You know, we were ready to take the wrong turn.
That is so cool, man.
Considering you think what's like John O'Groats to Land's End is what, maybe
700,
like,
is it?
Is it 700? So it's like nearly double that, a little bit less, but like you're going from there and back.
Yeah,
that's
on
insane.
a pedal bike.
Just living off noodles, we were spending about £2 a day. We would come across hammock shops, so it would be like this metal shelter, maybe about 20-30 hammocks, normally empty. I think it's for the lorry drivers if they're driving through the night though. And they cost 20 pence and you get the whole night in a hammock. So we were all about saving the money. And we didn't have to use our tent. We were setting up, putting down in the morning. Jesus. Give the lady 20 pence or the guy 20 pence. And
was there any danger? Was there,
There were some, mainly the traffic. We were dodged by trucks, man, big lorries that didn't see us. We were like, whoa, have to swerve in. There's cliff drops next to you. We were hit by mopeds. We were chased by dogs as well. It was... but it wasn't dangerous in terms of survival-wise. We were on a road, so there was people where there's people, there's water, there's food, there's shelter type of thing. But yeah, it was wild.
But like bikes getting robbed in the night or anything, you'd wake up and something had gone, anything. It was not.
There was a time where my friend was cycling, and I'm sure he left something that looked like a wallet or his wallet or something in his basket, and the guy was just on his moped. He just like pulled up next to my friend. They were both. Sometimes you were in the middle of the road. Sometimes we would grab onto the lorries because we couldn't be bothered cycling. The lorries would pull us.
Wow.
And the guy would be, get off my lorry in Vietnamese, and we'd like to like grab a different lorry.
Annoy.
Yeah, but this guy rocked up on this guy rocked up on his moped, and he starts like big grin to my friend, starts smiling at my friend, and I'm turning around thinking what's going on there. Next minute he just puts his hand in my friend's basket, and my friend just flipped out on him. He's not really, he's such a chilled, laid-back character, so it was quite funny to see him annoyed with this local, trying to shout at him in English, and the guy doesn't understand, but they just part and go different ways. So there was only that. There wasn't really, the bikes were so naff that if they got stolen, we'd just pick another. I called mine Elder, my friend called us Dot, because they were granny bikes, and we would all need to give them ridiculous granny names.
Did you enjoy that journey, or did you feel like you were saying, alluded to earlier, like let's just get to Hanoi? Like,
enjoyed it. Yeah, really enjoyed it. And that was probably the catalyst. I was like, what? I loved this world map at the end of my days and have different adventures, around the world, having lived my life to the full. That's where it sort of started kick-starting. I had these ideas. It would be raining when we had no waterproofs. It would be, the sun would be burning down, but yet we still had only a vest. So it was bad for us, We would mix in the mosquito spray of the night, because sometimes we'd cycle all the way through the night. The mosquito spray would mix with the sunscreen during the day, so our skin turned blue as well. The last day we had issues with the visa, where we were excited to get to Hanoi because we were so hungry. We were just living off Red Bull, so unhealthy, and noodles, and if we afforded it, we would like throw in a sausage or an egg with our noodles to treat ourselves. And for that last stint, we cycled all the way through the day. We then continued, because we decided to cycle all the way through the night, and then we continued to cycle all the way through the day. So we would cycle 39 hours straight on the last stint, which was like the last 100 or 200 miles. And by the time we rocked up, we'd gone over 45 hours with no sleep. We had these big dark... I didn't even have sunglasses, so my eyes was all like bloodshot. My hair was sticking up. I still had flies living in my hair, trying to escape. My skin was blue. I was super skinny. And by the time we rocked up, we were turned down 7 or 8 different times by hostels and guest houses just saying no. We looked like druggies, you know. They're
really,
like, staying here, back on your bike, literally. And on our bike we got, and we just had to keep searching until one lady took pity on us. And over 45 hours with no sleep, 39 hours of those pure cycling.
Bloody hell.
But again, I was just like, wow. I've always been very competitive. Always loved sports and the physical element, and I have a love and passion for travel and adventure. And that's when I started to discover, maybe I could mix my love for travel with my love for pushing myself in physical endeavours, and that's what effectively led me onto these bigger journeys that I'm taking.
It's strange you said before, because it is a very, very military kind of attitude. That's why when I've kind of looked up upon you and stuff, I thought, I think I'd get on with this guy, because it's a very military kind of life, isn't it? You think
a lot of people they do say, like, have you got military training? I was like, no military training.
Just even like you joked and said before, like, it's about the adventure, but it's about like the drunken nights out, and it's like the people you meet, and like the rant. That's what the military is as well. You know, that's exactly what the military is. You know, it's never let the truth get in the way of a good story and stuff. It's just all that kind of buzz and adventure. It's
big time.
And I guess that then was just planting the seeds for your adventures to come, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, after that we can. It was actually after that we left the bikes up against the wall and just told a few locals, help yourselves to the bikes. Although we'd sprayed them as well, so they were multicolour, looking even more ridiculous. We just thought because of was it Jeremy off Top Gear?
They did the same thing to James.
They sprayed his bike, and we were like, let's spray our bikes, and off we did. We sprayed it. We left them up against the wall. We continued, and then we went to Thailand, went to Pai, did the jungle survival. So that was straight after the Vietnam cycle, pretty much. About a week after, maybe max. And then from there we were back onto the usual Thailand craze. Across Malaysia, Singapore, onto Australia, where we were then north. Fruit picking mango.
How did you find Singapore? Because it's so expensive.
It was expensive. Singapore was difficult because as soon as we arrived there, we were hit hard by the price. And I remember we wouldn't go to any restaurant. We found out that if you go to a restaurant after 10 p.m, all of the food is like 50% off.
Really?
So we went every time. We'd starve ourselves, and we'd have lunch, just some cheap lunch, and then
1 minute past 10. Hello.
We'd be on the mark, sometimes early and eager, ready to have food available.
It's these guys again, Jesus.
Yeah, and that was all as I remember Singapore for back then.
I just like the fact that somewhere in Vietnam, there's probably those 2 bikes. Somewhere, some little Vietnamese woman's riding around in Hanoi, on those.
It'd be awesome to think that there's 2 young lads doing something similar. That would be mega to think that.
Those bikes. God, mental. Unbelievable that.
Yeah. So how are you at this point? Are you still kind of sticking to your 4-year plan that you on your dream board, or has that gone out the window by now?
That's gone out the window. Yeah. So effectively, there was working in Australia. I was fruit picking up north in Darwin. Then we said, let's get a cheap car. We got a car. We then attempted to drive from Darwin to Cairns. Have you been to Australia?
Never,
no.
Massive place.
Probably,
even just that, it's on the map, it's like Darwin and there's Cairns. That's like over 2,000 miles almost, depending on the route that you take. So the car broke down, and we had to wait 13 hours before we saw our first vehicle. And then we had to resort to hitchhiking for the next week just to get to Cairns, And so that was a cool adventure. I then went down south. I was working as an Australian para salesman then, knocking on people's door, 40 degrees Celsius in a suit, trying to sell Australian power and gas.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, this isn't what I was trying. This isn't what I came to. I came to do the scuba diving, and now I'm wearing a suit, outdoor knocking. Can I offer you some Australian power and gas? Did you sell much? I didn't sell much because I'd end up talking to them, and I just get on with people. I end up talking. They would invite me inside. I realised that that's against company policies, but I continued to do that. And I just kept going inside people's houses. They'd give me iced Coke. It was hot. We'd be talking about travel or whatnot, and then I'd have my boss knock at the door. Is my colleague in here? And so, although I did get promoted, and I had work lined up in Brisbane. And that was set. Here's another little nudge, actually. And that was set, but the day the flight was supposed to head to Brisbane was a huge hurricane, and the flight was cancelled. And then it just allowed me those extra 12 hours to consider, is this what I want to do? And I realised it wasn't only a couple of days before that. I remember I was shadowing my boss, and we walked up to the driveway. He said, just watch how I sell it. And there was this guy doing all these crazy pull-ups, some of the stuff that I now include in my workouts. And I remember being mesmerised, like, wow, that's so cool. Anyway, he jumped down. Jeremy tried selling the Australia Power Gas, and the guy pretty much said, he's not interested. He's got a contract, but he appreciates us, knocking on the doors, trying to sell, trying to make a living in these hot temperatures. Just a nice comment, that's all. We should have said bye on our way, but my boss turned around and said, yeah, but we get paid a lot of this though, don't we? I drive a Skyline. And I think he named a couple of other cars that I had, and instantly I cringed on the spot. I was embarrassed to be with him, But then the guy replied back to him and said, it's not all about the money though, is it? It's about that lifestyle too. And that was a kind of another wake-up call. That was like a backhand to the face by this guy, unintentionally, of, this is the reason why I'm traveling. I'm not traveling 100%. So it just sort of woke up that adventure spirit in me. And 3-4 days later, I purchased ladies' mountain bikes, because that's all we could afford, $50. Off we went, and we... Yeah,
you still with your friend at this point?
Yeah. I rejoined with him. He had a different job down south. He was cleaning swimming pools, so he hated that too. And we cycled over 700 miles then with these pink and white mountain bikes across the Great Ocean Road. Still the same tent from Vietnam, which wasn't waterproof, but we were past caring.
Mate, it's mad, isn't it? How I'll say, not that I look at my dad in this disregard, but it's funny, isn't it? How someone's how they can view life can make you think, fuck, no, that is not what it's about. Yeah. Like when my dad was like, just get a normal job, and when this guy, was being disrespectful to your boss and was kind of like. It's like when people don't realise that life's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Yeah.
100%. What
is life? And you're on your deathbed with a load of money and a few nice cars. Yeah. Fuck, fucking what, man?
And it wasn't just that alone. It was also the fact that every morning he would have a KFC, or a Red Rooster, I think it's called in Australia, which is similar to a KFC. Every morning he would be having this unhealthy, KFC, let's say. And I remember missing the turn-in once, or this girl who was driving missed the turn-in, and he flipped. My boss, he flipped because he wouldn't get his KFC for breakfast. And I was like, man, so I'm all about the health, the fitness, the travel and adventure.
It's not conducive to your lifestyle,
man. Myself in an environment which, is completely out of my comfort zone as well. Really, this isn't what I'm here for. And with that guy doing all of those push-ups and being healthy, he was ripped as fuck as well, and jumping down and saying it's not all about the money, it's about that lifestyle. All of a sudden, it didn't become just about the money and just about the 9 to 5, but also the health and the fitness. It all hit me, and I was like, yeah. And I'd started to put on a little bit of weight as well. I think I was still hungry since that Vietnam cycle, I just, oh man, it was hideous.
Sorry, mate, go on.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, it's so funny about that money thing, because I was having a conversation we was at a funeral actually, and the one thing you'll never hear at funerals is, I know it's suddenly took a dark turn this, but the story is you never hear people go, that Tom Wickstead, God, he had so much money, he had the best sofa, he had the best car. They'll always go, that Tom Wickstead, he really, he lit up the room, he did some incredible stuff.
Yeah, do you ever hear the story when Tom was in fucking Vegas with fucking, this and that, it's those type of...
Yeah, you never hear, no one ever mentions money at funerals ever, when you're doing a eulogy, is it eulogy, or whatever, and it's so true, that's all people...
Just the material at the end of the day,
exactly, When shit hits a fan, and at the end of things, and people just remember for what good person you were, what you did, your character, 100%.
It's that thing. I love the saying. It's people won't always remember what you say. People will remember how you made them feel.
That's it.
And
too true.
If you're having a lifestyle where you can hopefully inspire, or people look up to you and go, wow, that's fucking cool. Yeah. That's what people remember. That's Tom Wicks, that I had a fucking cool life. That was inspired me. And
definitely.
It's not the fucking 100%. I had a fucking great car.
Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. 100%.
Exactly that. Yeah. Like you turn around, I drive a Skyline. It's like, come on. What?
Mate, if that's your big fucking, come on,
man. But I got myself right out of there.
Isn't it funny though, mate, how people can inspire you by, for example, fucking hell, it's inspiring already listening to you, but then there's also, I find there's inspiration from people like that, as if not to be like that. That's a motivation not to be like that. I do find motivation in that negativity as well as I do in the positivity.
Definitely.
When I see people, I'm like, fuck, I want to work twice as hard because I do not want to be like that.
No, for sure. It's almost like, I don't know. It's almost this is what I love about people is we are all different, aren't we? We're just all so different, and sometimes you can look at that. Like I'm not this guy, but someone who is just getting by with their life and not bothered about the ambition, being ambitious or setting goals. And sometimes that's also something to be like, wow, kind of envy him. He's so content.
He's happy.
And I'm always on the go. I'm always wanting to do this or that. So it's one of those, isn't it? Each to their own.
Yeah.
There's
definitely.
no right, there's no wrong. It's just different, isn't it?
We were having this conversation like not so long ago about just like, just finding things that just make you happy, like regardless of how, like you've just mentioned, ambition or whatever, just something that, I mean, look, we do this podcast. We don't get paid to do it. This is out of our own time, kindly out of your time, but just like
just make it happen.
Love it. Just really enjoy it. So let's do it. So
I remember saying to my dad recently retired. He'd done 30 years in the fire brigade, and he retired as a firefighter. And I said to him, "Why did you never go for a promotion?" And he said, "I fucking couldn't be bothered with all that bullshit of being in charge and all the paperwork and stuff." And for years I couldn't quite get my head around why he never had the ambition to kind of go. But then it's like you say, each to their own. Once he clocked off, that was him. He didn't have nothing, and that's how he wanted it. He liked it. He was just like, I'm happy with.
That's being content. Yeah,
I'm content.
And sometimes there's something cool about that as well, isn't it? There's something. He's not always chasing his own. He's in the moment. You kind of. And I know I like to see myself as well. I'm sure you guys, I would agree, seeing ourselves in the moment. But at the same time, you have to plan ahead. You're always looking to achieve the next big thing, or you're always planning or wanting to be somewhere, or and sometimes it's to really draw back. And I think that's probably something that I could learn from these guys, is actually just being in the moment and not always looking to
do some
I mean, I think lockdowns helped me with that as such, that just that I've always got a not fear of missing out, but like that I'm not getting ahead. Whereas when you can't do anything, literally can't go to a shop or you can't do anything, then
you're not on your own either. So if you've got competition,
exactly.
Well, they're not getting ahead either.
Exactly. As weird as that is, but
selfish Tom, just happy that no one else is getting ahead.
It is. No, I just like that. It's weird though.
No, for sure, it is.
So and then. So Mongolia was first then?
Yes.
Yeah. So how did you plan for that? And
so Mongolia terrified the shit out of me, man. Mongolia was that big one. After Australia, we came back home temporary, and then we went back to Asia. We went to India, even though I sort of blew that once in a lifetime year-long visa in Australia. It was too expensive for me. I couldn't survive there. And so I went back to Asia, India, and we started trekking the Himalayas. I had an awesome time. And then after that, I was going to continue the long plans of the 4 year. But then I thought, no, I need to take the next step now. And so I came back to the UK. I topped up some more funds via Lifeguard, and they opened up the job. So I went back to Lifeguard and at that job. And then I remember just something popped to mind when I was doing the Land's End to John O'Groats cycle. I just got myself a bike, smashed out. I don't know. I think it was 7 days. I went for it. The last day I did 204 miles. Just to, again, it was like I had all of this built-up energy from Lifeguard and that I needed to get out. So I did the Land's End John O'Groats cycle. And on that cycle, just a conversation came to my mind, and it was when I was in Koh Tao in Thailand with an Irish guy who said that he's doing a dive master. That's the first level where you can actually start working and earning an income. And I was like, oh, that's mad that you're doing a dive master here. Why? Why here? He said it's the cheapest place in the world to do your dive master. And he labelled all of these, he said, like, you live on a beach, it's great island life, you've got the nightlife, you've got strong community, some awesome diving, and it's the cheapest place. Whilst I was cycling, fast forward like a year later, whilst I was cycling, that conversation came to mind. It's crazy, as we were saying, like the little prods, the little nudges. Like that guy saying it's not all about the money, it's about the lifestyle, and that changed my course, and it probably led me to India, And then again, when I was cycling that Land's End John O'Groats, that came to mind, and I just clicked. Before I'd even finished that cycle, I had already made the decision. I'm going to go back to Thailand, and I'm going to live there. Don't know how long, but I'm going to take on my scuba diving instructor qualifications. So for the next 2 years, I was teaching scuba diving. I worked my way only one below the highest ranking, which is course director. So I was a master scuba diving instructor, teaching people all of these speciality, night dive, cave dive, wreck dive, all of that. Was loving it, and I was a Muay Thai fighter as well. So I was training, competing with the locals, killing my shins as well, because when you block a kick, it was painful. And I always come from that boxer's stance, and they would just jack up your legs. So I had to just eradicate everything I knew from boxing, start from scratch. It was the discipline. They slept at the gym. It was just everything about it that I loved. And I had a stadium fight as well, and some club fights. And if you get paid, it's pretty much good enough to pay 2 or 3 months worth of accommodation.
Is it really? Yeah.
So I was earning money by fighting, and by, you got all of the locals ringside banging, holding up their money. They're either pointing at your opponent or they're pointing at you, and then you both go to war, and that's it. It's scary. So that was great. But whilst I was there for 2 years in Thailand, all of this previous stuff, the Burmese Hill Tribe, the Vietnam cycle, started to sink in. I thought, man, I'm only 22. I want to be doing more of these adventures. So then I got the laptop out. I was looking at the world map of places I could go. I realised I didn't want to do a cycle because I'd done quite a lot of cycles already, but I wanted to do more of a trek. And I liked the idea of it being in a very extreme environment in a country that I know nothing about, and relying solely on myself to survive my way across. And just all of these sort of pointed at Mongolia. I was on the travel route for 2 years. The main topic of conversation with the students that you teach is travel, and not one of them had said that they come from or plan on going to Mongolia. I was just like, what is it with this place? Why aren't people going there? 2012 this was, and yeah, I was like, right, I want to plan to do a journey, maybe 100 miles. I was thinking maybe 200 miles, maybe with a friend. So Matt, I told him the dangers. He was pretty much terrified by the dangers. He was like, nah, right, man, you're on your own on this one. And then I thought, okay, well, why not walk? If I'm going to do it, why not do it properly? Walk the full length, which was just over 1,500 miles.
Jesus, tonight.
And then I started to look at how it could be done, and then I thought, contact those people who have done it before, ask their opinions, their help, their advice. And then I started to get Mongolian logistics managers involved. So this one was proper planning now.
And hadn't one person tried it before, but had to be
So we started to look for those people to do it, but we couldn't find any evidence to suggest that anyone had completed a solo and unsupported walk. People have walked across the country, and the nomads are constantly travelling up and down throughout the country with their tight-knit community, with their camels, with their yaks as a family unit. But solo and unsupported, I was like, I wonder if this could be done. It would mean it's 3 weeks over the Altai Mountains, 5 weeks across the Gobi Desert, and 3 weeks up through the Mongolian steppe. And it wasn't just me researching; it was the various teams that I brought on board voluntary. They were helping out, which was amazing. And again, we could, through all of the research, we found this one guy, and this one guy claims to be the first to attempt a solo and unsupported walk across Mongolia. He tried 3 times. He was a Navy soldier. He was a desert explorer. And that put me off. Genuinely, I was just like, maybe not Mongolia. I started to look at different countries then and realised that it was just after the halfway point that he was evacuated.
When you say unsupported as well, what's as in?
Yeah, so we realised that I wouldn't even be, if it was unsupported, I couldn't take a rucksack because I wouldn't be able to carry enough food and enough water. I'd have to take or pull a trailer. So I had to have a trailer pulled. So there was no van. In fact, the guy made a joke. He was a good guy. I reached out to him. Ripley, his name was. And I sort of said, what the dangers, what the challenges, and he labelled this big list. There's snow blizzards, sandstorms, grey wolves, drunken nomadic drifters, steep ravines, stagnant water, the lot. And I was just like, oh my God, what am I doing? And I was a 22-year-old fighter and scuba diver living on an island about to go to a desert to do something that I'd never done before, And this guy has tried, failed. I sort of thought, what chance do I have, type of thing. And that's why I ruled that out. But at the same time, I reversed that. I thought just because no one's found a way to do something doesn't mean it can't be done. And so I started to look and really plan and focus all of my time and energy on Mongolia, and realised that for the solo unsupported, it would be no film crew. It would be completely self-filming, which was a nightmare. It meant that I'd have to drop off my trailer, run ahead of myself, set up the camera on the tripod, run back to my trailer, film myself walking to the camera and past the camera to run back for the camera to do it down, pack it and continue. The nightmare had it so clearly over 1,500 miles, right? And unsupported, meaning I would have to carry all of my own provisions needed to survive. I couldn't have any support crew with me, no van nearby. In fact, it was quite a low budget expedition that my only point of pickup was about 3 or 4 days away, if I'm lucky. So if you stand on the back end of a snake, then that's not.
Did you have a satellite phone?
I had a satellite, text only satellite, so I couldn't even call. So it was text only, help, and then it would take my logistics manager 4 days. And the guy Ripley, who previously attempted, made a joke saying that if you want helicopter evacuation, you got to marry yourself a Russian. Obviously that didn't happen, but he was pretty much making out that his wife was Russian anyway, so he had access, I think, to the Russian military, and had access to Mongolia. I didn't have that, so it would be, text only. And hopefully, if my agent finds me on time, he was based in the capital, Ulaanbaatar, I could make it out, but I would need to allow at least 3 to 4 days. The locals, I could come across the locals if they wanted to give me chai and stuff. I could drink, I could eat, but the majority of it was in my trailer, going across. And so, I came back home. I left Thailand. I moved back in with my parents. I couldn't even afford no gym membership. I had my uncle drop me off a tractor tire. I bought myself a sledgehammer from my local Sturmat. I was doing everything outside, 6 in the morning, grinding 2-3 hours every day in the rain and the snow. It didn't matter. Flipping the tire, beating it with a sledgehammer, trying to build up my inner core strength, really, and my durability, ready to pull the trailer across. The trailer, we couldn't afford no carbon fiber, no good stuff, it was built in a family friend's back garden, which on an empty load, because it was mild steel, it was 40 kilograms with nothing
Fucking hell.
Nothing in, no.
Nothing in, so
Jesus.
It amounted on a full load, it was 120 kilograms, which is about 18 stone, which is a heavyweight boxer, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
How much is it, AJ or Andy?
16, 17 stone maybe,
So I was just trying to build up the durability, because it's one thing doing a certain amount of reps, but for such a long period of time, for 78 days.
That type of exercise as well, it's like, I call it like man strength. It's like, it's not a bench press. It's like, even if you just like pick something up and put it on your shoulders, like it's like proper man strength, isn't it? Like farmer strength,
bone strength, I like to call it. It's like, what? But you got what?
We used to call it.
They're small, they're skinny, but they're lethal. They're all brutal, and it's like, how are they packing such power? It must be in their bones.
It is a different type of fitness, isn't it? We used to have it in the Marines. You'd go in the gym from week 1 to 9. You'd be in the gym. And then from week 10 to I think 24, you'd go on the bottom field, and they'd call it, that's like man phys. It's so different from being in a gym doing a few press ups to then just that kind of rugged, you're pulling blokes, you're fireman's carry, and you just it is
out
just
in the elements as well, isn't it? You're out in a place which isn't comfortable. You've not got the aircon on if it's a hot place. You've not got shelter if it's raining. You're just out there. And I was getting dirty. I was getting the mud all over me. I was still keeping up the Muay Thai on the bag. I was just probably not healthy training. I've molded the training. It's different to how I train now compared to back then. But I think back then I needed it, because I wasn't just training to prepare physically. I was training to prepare mentally. When it's 5-6 in the morning, the last thing you want to go do when you hear the wind and the rain outside is get out and start flipping tractor tires. In the mud splashing all over your face. That's the last thing. But I knew that Mongolia wouldn't give me that option of making a decision. There would be no choice. I'd have to get out. So that was, and I remember...
It's more mental training than anything that, isn't it?
It's almost 60% mindset, 40% physical for that time, because I was so fearful, because what that email said to me was, prepare to be attacked by wolves. You're guaranteed to face snow blizzards, sandstorms, and none of this sort of stuff I'd ever faced. So I didn't even know how I would react. I'd never done that on my previous adventures. So I just, how would I feel being lonely for such a long time on my own? I've not got a friend there where I can have banter, where I can. He motivates me, I motivate him. There's two minds to help make the right decision. What if there's a decision where if I get it wrong, it costs me my life type of thing, and it's got to be 100% on me, my responsibility. So there was all of this, and I was trying to say, what's it going to be like to be dehydrated, and what if I come across a well that's locked or dry? have I got enough water to get me like another week to the next well, for example? And it was just all of it. I was scared, you know.
Mate, that would play such like that resource thing of water and sort of thing would play such mind games because like I'm sure it did. Like, not only have you got to face, like you mentioned, like the Gobi Desert and that. You've got the problem of being tired. Then you've got the issue of like you're actually
as well.
Yeah, you've got your endurance and that sort of thing. And then you've got to think, right, so I need to reserve this water till X date, and I've only got this amount of food as well. So there's not like when you were doing, I know it's different, but when you were doing Vietnam, you know, there's that
guaranteed water.
Yeah,
guaranteed
I can kind
food.
of find. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's that safety element for sure. Yeah. Whereas with Mongolia, it was a risk. I look back now and I think I'm 22. No real experience at all. You know, just doing crazy adventures, but still relatively safe. You know, in Burma I was with a tribe who knew that what they were doing. In Vietnam I was cycling, and I'm guaranteed coming across a lot of locals who were always friendly. But in Mongolia, I could go. I went over like 8 days without seeing a single human, you know?
Yeah, it's a proper mission, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like, what? And then to realise, maybe if it had been done before, at least I would have had that thing that, okay, this is doable. But my thoughts were like, you know, what did the previous guy face to call for pickup? That I'm also going to face, that he didn't get over, that I must dig for something that I don't know I have in order to be the difference between failing and succeeding. You know, so it was all that. And I remember on one of his last emails, he left a comment saying, incredible is the ability to continue no matter what. And that terrified me because I didn't really know what he meant by it. I was like, what does that mean? But
say that again. Incredible as well.
Incredible is the ability to continue no matter what. And I didn't get that. I used it as
and he just signed off.
And that was awesome, the last time I spoke to him. Yeah, and I was just like, wow, what does he mean by that? And it couldn't make sense of it. But I was training. I remember listening to music, training Muay Thai, running up through the jungles and whatnot, rucksack on, headphones in, just incredible. What does he mean? What does he mean? What does he mean? I remember starving myself of water as well, you know, dehydrating myself when I was training for 3 hours straight, you know, no water, no nothing, just trying to get my body ready. And unfortunately, I did face, you know, difficult time where I did almost die in the Gobi Desert. But I, you know, there was many things that played a part, but his saying also really helped. And when I completed it, he wrote to me again saying, you proved it could be done. I like to think I was the angel sitting on your shoulder. That was nice of it, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah.
So that time in the Gobi Desert then, because I've seen a clip on YouTube and I'll put it on YouTube for you, but for people watching. But there was a time where I think you were next to your trailer, and the trailer just looks like literally something like a horse waffle, or a donkey. It's insane. And you were there, like sat next to it. I think you were cutting an apple. With a knife, and I thought that's proper. Like, rather than just eating it, you're just there cutting it with a knife. And
I got a story as to why, but carry on. I'll tell you why now.
Go on.
So with a knife, it was high altitude and it was cold, and I didn't take no Vaseline or Lipsil. That my lips had chopped up so bad that even in the morning I'd have to part my lips. So even drinking out of my ration pack, like porridge ration pack in the morning, I'd lift it, and as I put it down, there'd be a flow of pus and blood into the ration. So I couldn't open my mouth to bite the damn apple.
Hence why,
So I had to have little chunks at a time.
Because I was just going to say, you could tell on that clip. I don't know where it was.
That was only 2 weeks in.
Oh, was it? You looked fucked.
I was ruined. I was like, wow, okay, maybe that training didn't...
There's that thing, I remember seeing a meme, and it was this, I'm sure it was Mongolia.
Yeah.
And it's this guy, like native guy, and he's got like a wolf kind of... wolf skin kind of thing on, and he looks cool as and it's this thing, and it just said you may think you're cool, but you're not kind of, you know, a fucking chief Mongolian who with a wolf on his back, kind of fucking with a bow and arrow or something.
So horseback,
that was it.
Wearing like this wolf skin or something with an eagle perched on
that's it,
They're just rolling through like the Altai mountains.
And it's like
and that eagle will catch foxes, it'll catch things as big as wolves.
It's one of the best memes I've ever seen. It's like, you know, you think you're cool and like living in Liverpool with your nice watch on and you're this. It's like, you may think you're cool, but you're not a Mongolian sitting on a horseback with an eagle fucking with a wolf. That's just
so cool. So down true as well, and it's crazy. And the locals were amazing. They were sort of slightly shorter bulky as well. You know, they have their diet normally consists of high protein, high calories, because it's so cold there, especially in the Altai Mountains, that it's their fats, it's their meats, it's their proteins, and they're stocky. They're known for wrestling, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they are hardcore as well.
They remind me, they look like almost like you know, New Zealand.
Yes, like the rugby.
Yeah, like
get
that kind of build. I always think when you think of Mongolians.
Yeah, no, for sure, they are wrestling at
Kiwis.
At wrestling.
I remember watching. I don't know if you've seen Long Way Round with Hugh McGregor and.
I
Charlie.
haven't, but
No.
this does. I've seen The Long Way Down. I think
Through Africa in that way.
That's the one
yeah.
I've seen.
The Long Way.
People have been mentioning when they hit Mongolia. That's the one that broke them, right?
Yeah,
And they're
big
just like,
star. And it just seems like, from what, obviously I've seen your clip on YouTube, and I've seen their round the world thing, and when I've seen Mongolia, it's just literally emptiness.
Yeah.
Like complete emptiness. Just where you just cannot see where like the end is, you know.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, and it depends, because they would have been either down south towards the Gobi Desert or further northeast, which is quite brown as well. But Mongolia is normally the Gobi Desert down south, but then the Mongolian steppe, which is kind of like rolling lush green fields of grass. I say fields, there's no fences, it's no man's land, which I love. So you could literally walk all day and just camp whenever you want. Literally walk a few meters off the track, pitch your tent, camp. But then the west is your Altai Mountains, so it's your snow-capped mountains. It's more your concrete huts with your Kazakhs, which brought the tradition of eagle hunting over to Mongolia. So it's mainly down south that is like the barren emptiness, you know. But Mongolia is actually, even up north of Mongolia, where it's a mix between the steppe and the mountains, you've got the reindeer tribes. So you've got them living not just in their white gurs, but like their teepees, their white felt tents, but they stick up pointy, and they've got these pure white reindeers. And they're just living out there in the wild up north, you know, amongst the trees, and it's like, wow. So, but it's a massive country again. That's why it's so diverse. There's so much between Russia and China.
When you complete this, is there a kind of, was it well documented before you were doing it? Was there this kind of outpouring from almost like the world press or like adventurers that you're like, wow, this guy's done it? Was there that sense of kind
completion?
Of yeah?
On completion, yeah, it was BBC World News. But we didn't have no funds for PR, so it was all generated just from the social media, which I quite liked the organic turn. So all of the previous adventures, again, no technology. I wasn't posting. I wasn't even signed up to Instagram. Was Instagram a thing? It probably wasn't a thing, was it?
2014,
2010.
Oh no.
So
I think
for like the Vietnam cycle, all of that was just for the pure passion and love, you know. But then when it came to planning Mongolia, I realised people's interest in it was higher, and so I wanted to make it more of a thing where I could not only do it for adventure's sake, but I partnered up with the Red Cross to try to save funds, but also raising awareness for climate change and the effects that it has on the nomadic way of life. Pretty much it gets so harsh there now in the winter that the nomads aren't used to, that it kills off their livestock, and so the locals aren't making any money, so they move to the capital city, but they move with their tents. And so now there's a Gur district around the capital city, and to stay warm, because it's one of the coldest, it's like minus 30, minus 40 degrees Celsius in the winter. So to stay warm, they'll burn anything they can, dirty coal, because the clean coal gets sent to China, plastics, the lot. And so there's now this smog, a lot, even all of the Westerners, most of the locals as well, try to escape the capital in the winter, because there's this smog of dirty air, of pollution. So fresh during the summer though. And kids, when they're born, some are surviving more than 3-4 days before they suffocate because they can't breathe. So the doctor has to say, just evacuate the city.
And this is because of global warming?
And this is because of global warming, yeah. So the winters, they have like this zood effect that comes through now that's harsher than ever before, and just the livestock, the animals can no longer survive, you know. So, but it's not a story many people hear about.
No, I was going to say that, that's one thing.
And it's big news. I don't know how many kids are dying. But yeah, straight after birth, 3-4 days, and they suffocate, which is awful. So I wanted to make it not just part of the mission, you know, part of the expedition, will he succeed or fail, but the beauty as well, the diversity, the locals, you know, take their stories. I never like it to be, you know, one man and his journey type of thing. I like it to be about the people, the stories from them, and, you know, the climate change, the effect, and if I can help bring back something positive to the country for them allowing me to go there in the first place, then that's what I'll try to do. And that's what I did, and that sort of spurred on the Madagascar and like these partnerships. And then Mission Yangtze was on, you know, multiple levels above in terms of partnerships and collaborations and interactivity. But the Mongolia journey is where it started, so that's always close to my heart.
We kind of skipped over the bit where you said you nearly died in the Gobi Desert. So what happened?
Yeah. So the Gobi. So it was 3 weeks over the Altai. It was 5 weeks across the Gobi, and I think this was week 3 going through the Gobi. I was just after the point of where the previous guy had called it, and it was at its hottest, so it was 40 degrees Celsius plus. I was a lot skinnier, a lot weaker, because I'd lugged it so many weeks over the mountains and whatnot. And I was now pretty starving as well. I'd have a ration pack at 5 in the morning. I would start my day. I'd had no snacks whatsoever. So I was like rationing my rations, and my next bite to eat would be 12 to 14 hours later whilst pulling the trailer still. It was a mix now between gravel and soft sand, so the thin wheels that I had on the trailer was now sinking in the soft sand, which meant that I was like 90 degrees turned with my walking poles trying to pull, using my arms and my legs to pull this trailer. And I just broke, man. I just collapsed. You know, I was just I faced crazy dehydration. I was heat exhausted. I was on my way to heat stroke. You know, the days went on and on. One of the wells was dry. I always had confirmed and unconfirmed water sources, and this one was an unconfirmed. If it's got water, great, I'm safe. But I had gone through so much of my water to get to this water source, which was now empty, that I had to, I was already rationing it, but now I had to ration it even more to get to the next water source, which was a confirmed water source. It was a whole community where people are living.
Yeah.
And anyway, I pushed on. And at this point, I could feel my organs drying up. I could feel my insides literally talking to me. I was just in a bad way. I was delirious. I was hallucinating. My head was spinning. And the only shelter that I could find, because there's no breeze, there's no natural shelter, no trees, nothing like that, was underneath my trailer. So I remember just lying on the desert floor. I could only fit my top half of my body in, so my legs are out, just absolutely melted. My head's spinning. I'm all like sunburned, blistering almost from the heat. It was awful.
Bloody hell.
And just thinking to myself, really, you know, I had the method to call for pickup, but I had passed the point of pickup now. And so I was thinking to myself, have I made that stupid schoolboy error mistake where I've now passed? Because it's either 4 days to the next community that I now had up to this point, at my worst point, or do I risk not moving anywhere, staying under my trailer for maybe 6 days, which I won't be, you know, drinking as much water, and I won't be walking, burning as much energy, and hope that my agent finds me in time. And I realised that wasn't an option, because I believed I couldn't survive 6 days. It was at that point. But I also believed that I couldn't keep getting up and pushing on. I would spend over an hour at a time underneath my trailer. And again, you know, I threw it back to when I was planning for travels when I was 16, 17, of actually breaking my goals down. And what allowed me to survive in the Gobi Desert is setting myself a routine of not thinking about my loved ones or, you know, what happens now if I die or all of that, but actually only focusing on the only option, which was to survive. And I focused on 5 minutes rest under my trailer, and I set my target of 100 meters. I could see 100 meters, you know, I can visualize that. I've always been a big believer of like the law of attraction, visualization, but I could not visualize 4 days. It was I was in too much agony, in so much pain, but I could visualize 100 meters, you know, I could see it. So I thought maybe if I can rest for 5 minutes, get out and push on for 100 meters at a time. So 100 meters, 5 minutes, 100 meters, 5 minutes. Maybe it's doable. And I just about made it. In a bad way. It was a community. I was off the radar for a good 8 days trying to recover. My urine was pretty much black. It was sleepless nights. Sometimes I couldn't sweat, sometimes I was sweating. I had signal then. I called back, and you know, they worked out that it was a potential heat stroke, which is usually fatal. And I just told myself, I'm going to stay in this community no matter how long it takes. I'm going to stay here until I'm 100% so I can push on. Because I believed I had passed that point of whether you succeed or fail. I've gotten past that. It should start getting slightly easier now. And it was still very difficult, but I'd learned a harsh lesson, and that was how fast the sun can take you.
God,
so I slowed down slightly. I ramped up the water even more so, and made it to the steppe. And pushed on. The Altai had its own challenges with the wolves, and the steppe had its own challenges from being like in the long grass and having to camp out in the long grass when there's Amur pit vipers, and you're sort of like, oh damn. But and the fault lining as well. The storms were bigger, believe it or not, in the steppe, and it was fault lining hitting the ground, and I'm pulling a trailer made of metal behind me. And I'm just like, this is insane. But 78 days later. Yeah, cross that finish line.
Jesus.
One of the scariest things, I think, it's you're on your own. If you do with someone, it's kind of like...
And your own thoughts and your decision making, and there's no one to check in with, and no one to call.
Yeah.
I could when I reached the cities, because I still had my phone, but I would need to rely on having signal. And if there's signal, you're in a city. And I was in the Gobi Desert, so it was text only. I had a certain amount of text as well, I think. Oh, it was just insane.
One thing I always remember from Frank, he rode across the Atlantic Ocean on his own. We had him on the podcast, and it always sticks with me what he said. And he said, I don't mind being scared, and I also don't mind being alone. But being alone and scared at the same time is something... and I think that's true, isn't it? Sometimes you're alone, and you might be in your house, you're alone, you're fine, you like your own company. Sometimes it might be a bit scary, but there's a group here and it's fine. Being alone and scared, I think it's just a horrible mix, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And especially, probably even more so when you have your senses with you. At that point, my senses were gone. I was just... I just believed if I did not keep getting up and pushing on, I'm going to die. And my brain was scrambled. And that's when that saying came back to me. What Ripley said, incredible is the ability to continue no matter what. Because somehow my brain was scrambled, as I said. But somehow I managed to personify incredible of what it was. I was almost on my own, and I was like, no one and nothing's incredible. Of course, that's impossible. But I almost created an inspirational figure that I could try to follow in the footsteps of. It's like, if incredible was a thing, what would it do? And this thing was breaking its goals down. It was getting up, and I remember trying to keep up. It was walking faster, further ahead, but when it would rest, I would rest, and it would always be the first one out of the trailer, and I had to get out my trailer, and there would always be a gap after gap, and it was beating and getting ahead, but I just tried my best to stay on its tail. And I never told him that. Maybe I should tell him that. But yeah, that saying,
just amazing what the mind can construct.
It's mental. So it was a lot of things, and I do believe heavily that it was also the training, but there's also little things, little memories, little sayings, a mix of everything.
Did you ever go like down the religious route? Are you religious and anything? Like think, this was...
I didn't actually. No, I have had that lots though. I've had people say, you didn't do it. That was God that helped you through the journey. You didn't. I was like, damn, I should have trained.
What a brilliant response back.
But I'm open-minded, of course. Yeah, but I'm far more of the preparation and grind rather than luck and religion type of thing. But then maybe that's just a thing that I rely on more so.
When I talk again, I'm not really, like you say, I'm kind of open-minded. When I love religion, one of my favourite quotes on religion is, I prayed every day for a bike, and I never got one. So in the end, I robbed one and then prayed for forgiveness. I think that's just such a great analogy of religion.
During that time when you're like all a bit delirious, because I've seen documentaries of people who were like, caught out in the middle of Australia and things like that, and you see this they create this paradise in the head where, the haze, and they feel like they can see water. And did that?
Yeah, what's that again? I forgot the name for that.
Is there a name for it?
There was a famous explorer that done it, I think, wasn't there? And he vowed he'd never do it again because he saw it.
What's it? Mirage. That's
Mirage.
Yeah. That didn't happen.
I didn't see no Mirage, but maybe that's because I knew that there wasn't water there. So maybe if I didn't know, because I had maps, and I was like, there's no water around here until I get to this point.
Yeah.
But maybe if I was there and I didn't have no maps, I would just be hoping and wishing so much to come across water that maybe my mind, just as it created this, how it personified incredible, like I wasn't physically seeing something, but it was almost like I was, because I was delirious. Maybe that's probably what they
experience.
Yeah, maybe they're just hoping and wishing for it so bad that they think they see something, because there is that does happen, doesn't it? It's like angling within the lighting, and it makes it look like in the distance there's a
like a glimmer of
a glimmer of
a lake or something. Water source. Yeah, 100%.
And I guess if you don't know that, there might be, there might not be. You'd be more susceptible. But I knew factually, there's nothing there.
I'm always fascinated as well, mate, how people, like I said to you at the start, how I'm just as inspired by how you've kind of created this life. Once that's kind of done, this amazing adventure, was it then a kind of looking at a career, i.e. like, making money? Obviously it's great having this lifestyle, but you've got to fund it somehow. Once you've done this amazing adventure, was it a kind of a light bulb moment of, I've now got a pretty fucking cool story, let's start sharing it?
It was actually before that journey that I started to think like this, because in Thailand I had like such a cool job. I should have been satisfied. I was fighting, I was doing extreme sports, I was scuba diving, I was partying on the beach. That was a cool lifestyle. I should have been. If I'm not satisfied with that, so I was kind of like, I knew adventuring was my passion, and they always say do something you're passionate about, but I just didn't thought, what, get paid to travel? That's not really a thing. Now it's more of a thing, isn't it? Even in 2010, it's not that long ago, but I was like, really? But I thought if I can pursue what I love, maybe something will come off the back of it. I don't know. So Mongolia was one of those tests, and I remember when I was like positive Ash back in my parents in North Wales before I did the Mongolia trip, belly full of tea, food. I was feeling great. I was like, I'm going to smash this Mongolia record. And I knew that when I'm on the Mongolia trip, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be scared. I'm going to be alone. I'm going to be breaking emotionally, physically. So what I did is I recorded, whilst I was positive at home, I recorded a note to myself, and I said I would never listen to that voice memo unless I really needed to. And it was one of those harsh, sort of stern talking tos, like, you better keep getting up.
That's
awesome. You're going to go through. And I don't know if I've not heard that method before. I don't know why I thought of that. I think it's just because I knew that my mind would change so much when I'm in Mongolia to what it is now, that I might forget the reason I started, or I might forget, all of the possibilities of if I complete it. And so I was just highlighting the possibilities of if I complete it compared to if I fail it type of thing. And it's never failing, because it's always a stepping stone. I believe that too. But it was a kind of like, if I don't make it, you got to go back to lifeguarding or scuba diving, compared to if you make it. And that just, I listened to that once, and that was in the Gobi Desert too. So it's kind of like the quote from Ripley, the message from myself, and just the training that just got me through that point. But I was looking at that as, if I complete Mongolia, maybe I can pursue this as a career. And that's why I continued. Don't think it was even 1 year before finishing Mongolia and starting Madagascar. It was straight to the next. Didn't want to be that one hit wonder type of thing. I was just like, right, I need to keep it going. I need to ramp this up. And I'm still thinking like that. My mindset is still trained like that. When I was in Mongolia, I was mentally planning Madagascar, but in a way not in a cocky way, in a way to give myself a boost or a motive. I was saying, if I can't complete this current journey that I'm on, you don't get the larger candy. You don't get the icing on the cake or whatever. You don't get to do Madagascar if you can't complete this one. So I was always like, right, I must complete this, then I get to go to Madagascar. And that really worked. The reason I chose Madagascar was I would be coming across more locals, and the locals for myself have just been everything to me on these.
Like you said before, it's telling that journey of their stories as well, isn't it?
Exactly. And I wasn't coming across a lot of locals in Mongolia. As I said, I went over a week, quite often, where I'd come across no one. But when I did come across them, they were amazing. They were always so friendly, always so inviting. I mean, there's one guy similar to that photo you're talking about, without his eagle, just chasing me down on horseback, and I just saw him approaching from a distance, and I remember thinking, like, it's taken him a while to get here. That's a hell of a distance to cover him. And can you imagine soldiers back in the Genghis Khan days, the Mongol Empire, when they would come after you, and they're hundreds of thousands and whatnot. This was one horse, and he was getting a little smoke of dust behind him, and he came all the way just to give me a tea to take away with me on my journey. And then did a U-turn and went back. I was like, whoa, because they know their environment, they know how harsh it is, and they want to help, they want to give. And I was just like, I want to come across more locals in Madagascar. was that place that I would be coming across. There's 24 million people living on the island.
Jesus.
80% of all plant life and wildlife found in Madagascar is found nowhere else on the planet.
Really?
Yeah.
So what was the task then, the Madagascar challenge?
So Madagascar, it was to attempt to become the first person to walk from the most southern point of the island to the most northern via its mountain range. So it's not a high mountain range, but it's kind of famous for, you've got the east and the west, which is kind of like its beaches, and then you've got this rugged sort of mountains mixed with jungle. So it's like mountainous jungle, rugged range, going almost the entire length, sort of mid-east of the island. And so I wanted to make it my journey to walk the entire length, summiting the 8 highest mountains along the way and sticking to the interior.
What are the heights of the mountains?
They're just around 3,000 meters.
Okay.
So they're not big mountains, but they're tough. Some of the toughest mountains I've climbed, actually.
Really?
Yeah, even more so than the Yangtze, which was over 5,000 meters. Just because it was jungle, so it was almost like climbing, but with a machete. So not your technical rope climbing, but climbing up, hacking through the jungle. You got spiders falling on you, got leeches falling on you.
Mate, I've got friends who are in special forces, and they have to go to Belize jungle training, and they say the jungle's the worst. It's the hardest bit. It's like for navigation and everything about it. It's just
the humidity, the fact that you wake up in the morning, you've got to put your wet clothes back on because they're not drying. So it was those type of not for the whole duration, which was good. It was very diverse. Madagascar, it had like desert, had tropical dry forest, and it had rocky mountains. Then it's got like your dense jungle, and sometimes we would walk for 12, 14 hours and cover only 2-3 kilometers as we're hacking.
Because it's so thick,
it's just
so dense.
Almost it was one part so impenetrable that we had to turn back and walk 3 days back on ourselves. 3 days back on ourselves. Talk about demoralising. Hey?
What was the full length then, north to
So
south?
that was only 100 miles longer than Mongolia. That was 1,600 miles. But it took 155 days, almost double the duration. And that was because the challenge.
A tenth of the. Was it? Sorry, did you say 100 miles?
It was 100 miles extra than Mongolia. 1,600. And Mongolia was 1,500. But with Madagascar, it was just challenge after challenge. I do not believe. I don't think there was one pleasant day's trek. I don't think there was a day where I thought, well, this has been
brilliant,
right. Always something from. I was held up at gunpoint by the military.
What?
Down south is like. Down south is fairly corrupt. But what we did is we were trying to avoid the bandits, and so we went into the jungle to hide from the bandits, but we realised that the bandits are in the jungle hiding from the military. So we were like, it was like Rambo shit. It was insane. So we escaped. We had to weigh up our odds. What's better, to come across the bandits or the military? And people aren't so sure down south. And so anyway, we exited the jungle. We came across the military drunken officer, AK-47 strapped around, demanded to see all of my ID and whatnot, gun pointed, straps slipping off his shoulder because he was drunk, catching his gun by the trigger with the barrel pointed at me and my guys. We were like, oh my god, this is a nightmare scenario. And then the rivers, pretty much most rivers in Madagascar have crocs in. And so we would have to, and because we were on the interior where there's less people, we'd have to sort of try to rely on the locals. But if there wasn't locals, we'd have to cross the rivers where there's white water. If there's no white water, then we would have to build a raft using natural resources. It would sometimes take us 4 hours. We had the spiders. I almost died of malaria. I managed to make it to a city, and the doctor says potentially only a few hours before slipping into a coma. Jeez. I realised I was walking with malaria for a few days and didn't realise, because it was the same stuff that I was dealing with in the Gobi Desert. It was like dehydration, it was my head spinning, so I was like, whoa, what's this? And I had to keep walking, keep pushing on until I made a small community which had overland transport, stayed there for a short while until one morning I just woke up, and I went from being like strong and capable to not even being able to pick up a glass of water. And that's when I realised this isn't no heat stroke, this isn't some sort of disease.
I guess the downside of being kind of going through what you went through on your first trek, you can't not think you're invincible, but you think, I've experienced this before, I know what it is. You kind of a little bit blasé almost, because you think, I know what this is.
Yeah, and no one's ever pointed that out before, actually, is after that Mongolia trip, I had overcome all of my fears. I realised not just me, but as people, that we're far more capable than we give ourselves credit for. We always try to dumb ourselves down or shell up or hide from the stuff that we're scared to face. But what Mongolia did is it opened it up, and I thought, yeah, I've done Mongolia. Even though Madagascar was the bigger journey, I knew that I would be with someone, so there'd be no solo. It's not a solo and unsupported record. There's people I can come across, more locals, and so I went there with more confidence.
Yeah.
Like I've got this, And Madagascar bitch slapped me across the face to remind me, no, you have not got this.
It's so interesting you say that, mate, because I do these motivational talks and get asked at the end, and people say, they might private message me normally, and they'll say like, oh mate, I could never have, if that had happened to me your life, I could never have done it. And I say, you would have. Like, it's just what you said then. We are so much more resilient and adaptable as human beings than we give ourselves credit for. It might not be as extreme as getting blown up and things like that, but fucking, if you went around the room and asked people what have you overcome and what challenges, you'd be surprised what people have overcome. And I think a lot of times, like you've just said then, we don't give ourselves credit of how resilient we can be.
Yeah, it's too true. In anything in life as well, isn't it? It doesn't even have to be physical or doing adventures. It can be like working their way to CEO or whatever it could be,
Did you ever feel like you would during those expeditions that I'm sure we've all had given ourselves like excuses in our head, like, when you got malaria or whatever, but I think we should call it quits now. Did you ever get any of those excuses coming to you?
I didn't know. I know that the malaria one was very serious,
To be fair, getting malaria is a decent excuse to like quit, isn't it?
With my parents, I remember them calling. They were sort of like, what are you still doing in Madagascar? It's not a cold, Ash. It's not a flu. It's the world's biggest.
Fucking malaria.
It's malaria. But I felt in safe hands. I had a doctor. She had caught it just in time. And so you've got 4 different strains. You've got falciparum, which is the deadliest strain. It usually kills you within 24 hours, and that's the strain that I had. But because I was taking my anti-malarial on and off, but still enough to give me some sort of protection. That's why it allowed me to survive 5 days and not 24 hours. So I had still a dose inside me trying to fight this disease. But I say on and off because we came across a community, like rewind 2 weeks before I made it. We came across this community that was suffering with the bubonic plague. Still, such an ancient disease. Yeah, and I was warned about that, but I didn't know whether I'd come across any, but I did. And they instantly said, stay in your tent, don't do your cooking, stay away from any of the animals because it's the fleas, isn't it, on the rats and the dogs and whatnot. And so I did, stayed in my tent, wasn't leaving, a little bit paranoid for sure. And they cooked the food and they bought me and my 2 guides. I had 2 guides at this point because one didn't want to leave, and I pretty much said, but I don't have the funds to pay you. So that's fine, I come for free. Wow, he just really, really loved it, but then hated it afterwards. I was like, oh. It was only an extra week or 2 we wanted to stay for, and his name was called Me. So it was weird. So when I'm doing like these UK tours and I'm talking about me taking on the first section, it's like, what? But yeah, so they brought food to the tent, and that was rice and eel, and it smelled a little bit funky, that eel. I wasn't too sure, and I didn't really care. I was hungry, me were very hungry, me and Joe. And so we were eating this eel and rice, and pretty much the next few days we were suffering with diarrhea and we were vomiting. And so the anti-malarial tablets that I was taking,
flushing through.
Just flush it, yeah. Jesus.
And so that's why I think that's definitely why I was able to last longer.
And it's so incredible to keep, like, when you've got diarrhea. I mean, we've all been ill and like maybe called in sick at work or something like that. But to know you've just got to keep going. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's next level.
We started laughing at each other because we would judge. Someone would always disappear and they wouldn't tell you. You just turn around, they're not behind you. So he's in a bush somewhere suffering. And so you just wait, park your bags down and wait till he comes out. You'd walk 10 meters, then it's my turn. I've got to go. And so it was because there was 3 of us now. So it was like we all suffered. So it was a bit of a nightmare. And then I just started to get worse and worse. And that's why I thought it was dehydration, because you get more dehydrated, don't you? Sure, with diarrhea. So I was trying to drink more water. I was like, this isn't possible because I am drinking a lot. And then I know it just turns out that malaria was grasping. Jeez. So yeah, you've got 4 strains. The deadliest strain, you can actually clear out of your system fully. So I like to be a positive guy. So unfortunately, I contracted the deadliest, but fortunately, it was the deadliest so that you can clear it, whereas the 3 lower ones, they can remain dormant in your system for life.
Really?
Which is scary. So by getting to that city and her having it clear out my system 100%, that was a bit of a morale booster. And I'd lost 13 kilograms in a week.
Fuck.
And I still had 4 months left of the journey to go, and I had the worst to come, the highest mountain and the densest jungles. And I just remember being in that hotel, just trying to do push-ups, sit-ups, trying to eat, I was swimming, working on body mobility. Only a few more days, and then I said to her early, she says, you've only got about 5 more days left until you can clear off the medication. I was like, that's fine, but am I good to continue? She was like, no, you can't continue. But she just saw how bored I was in this hotel. You know, I need to crack on. I'm feeling about 95%. And she said, right, yeah, you can continue, but you must continue to take the pills for the next 4 days to make sure it's out of your system. And of course I did. But yeah, I continued. I had the second highest mountain then to climb, which was really bad, but at the same time it allowed me to break back into it the hard way, you know. By the time I got to that mountain, I was ready to continue, you know, by the time I got to the top. And so it was just brutal. Madagascar was challenge after challenge. And then we had the highest mountain, which the locals say, you know, I'm sure you've heard maybe the Gertrude story. In order to peak or summit the highest mountain called Maramakocho, the locals say it's tradition, you must carry yourself a white living cockerel. You've got to protect it, you've got to feed it, you've got to give it water, you've got to look after it, and it protects you from the witches and bad spirits of the rainforest. So I'm like, wow, that's the crazy. Imagine that. Like, you've got to take. That would be so like health and safety, wouldn't it? Like, imagine taking a white chicken to the top of my.
A live one.
Alive. So yeah. And it had to be white because they really do believe in witches. The stories that I'll have to explain one story after if we've got time. I'm running on, aren't I? But,
imagine just getting to the bottom of Snowdon and someone saying, right, if you're going to climb Snowdon,
yeah,
you can take that with you.
And they're gifting you with a white chicken and look after it. Yeah. So we had to, but we knew we weren't going to come across another community before Maramakocho, and we had 2 mountains to climb before the highest. And so this chicken, which I named Gertrude, even though it's a female name and he was like a dominant cockerel, Gertrude was with me, 2.5 weeks. He became fully domesticated, almost like a pet. We fed him, we watered him, we let him off, and we wouldn't need to tie him up. He would walk after us.
That is mad.
He would sleep on top of my tent at night. I tried, getting him away, but he would love to sleep on top of the tent. Left shit droppings either side every morning. I had to clean it. But there was 4 of us. Me, Max, Suzanne, who's a Belgian photographer, she's like Lara Croft, she's hard as nails, so she joined. And there was Herb Porter, who was Malagas. So there was 4 of us, plus Gertrude, he was the 5th member, 2.5 weeks, going through the jungles. I would have to put him in my rucksack so his head would be sticking out.
That is mental.
Yeah, he would make all sorts of, so imagine that, 14 hours hacking, you've only covered about 2-3 kilometers, you're hacking, you're being stabbed, you've got spiders falling down your top, you're being bitten, you're having to apply off aloe vera because the bites are now infected. Each night you're applying like 6 to 7 leeches and flicking them out of the tent. God. And this whole time you've got this chicken on your shoulder, literally a machete in one side, chicken in the other.
That is fucking amazing.
And he made it. And sometimes you just pray for a little bit of rain. If it was sunny, he'd be out chirping and singing. If it was raining, he would just tuck down into my rucksack, and I wouldn't hear him. But he made it. We set him free on top and cracked on.
I thought that story was going to end by you cooking him, but thankfully you let him free.
Yeah, set him free. So they say it's taboo. If you eat him and if you bring him off the mountain, you'll be introducing the bad spirits and witches to that community, and they'll be pretty pissed at you. And I wanted to take him off because it was the cyclone season. He wouldn't have survived that mountain, maybe not even one night. But I fed him up. He was plucking worms as I was walking up. Every worm that I found, because it was raining, they were all surfacing. He was eating, and then I left him underneath some rocks, and I was just sort of calling him, hoping that he would follow. I was with 2 Malagasy people, otherwise I would have probably taken him down. Yeah. It became like a pet, you build
can imagine,
it's only chicken, but you build this bond with it. But he didn't follow. But,
when was it? This was 2016 then, was it?
This was, started in 2015, finished it in February 2016,
So even I suppose same again when you finished Mongolia, did you have that thank fuck that's over sort of like Jesus Christ?
I did with Madagascar.
It's a long time. You think it's 6 months? Well, no.
5 months, just over. Yeah. So And I remember specifically with Madagascar, it was the cyclone season, and we had been through hell. I almost lost my photographer on a river crossing as well. It was like the Marvad River, which is famous for crocodiles. It's notorious. It was night time, and we needed to get over that river now because there was another storm coming, and if that hits before we cross it, it's not crossable for another week at least. And we were running low on food. We were hunting, we were gathering, but it wasn't sustainable enough at that point because we were always on the move through places which were lush compared to places that weren't, in forests that had been burnt down. And so we had to get across that river. So it was nighttime. We all formed a human chain, just linking up. The river was roaring, so we'd have to shout over the loudness of the river. It was pitch black, so we had our head torch and it was shining in each of his eyes. And we came across a local who was sat there for 6 hours waiting for someone and anyone so that he could cross with. And he's a local that knows his river better than anyone. And he says, we'll link arms, he'll go in front. And he said, you must follow my exact footing. If you miss, then your head's under. He knew the rocks enough to keep your head above water. And we had the rucksacks on all strapped up. And we're like, shit, we debated it, our hearts were going, and we're like, right, okay. So we're watching, head to shine and shouting, you're right. It was like off something from a movie. It was terrifying. And as we're crossing, me and Max, my guide, we were arguing, before we started crossing, we were arguing of which way to face. I said, we need to face upstream, just so that we can grip our toes and fight against the river that's flowing towards us. And he was saying, no, we need to face downstream. I said, no, that's if we're taken by the river, flip yourself so you're falling downstream. I says, but we can't face downstream, it's just going to push us and we've got no grip, we're just relying on our heels and the heels going to slip. Cut a long story short, we faced downstream. And I was just like, this isn't good news. And Suzanne lost her footing, just slipped, and she was now grasped in mine and Max's hand. She was sinking, so occasionally she'd push up from the bottom of the surface. She'd come up, get a breath because her rucksack was pulling her down. Her hands were slipping, and my heart, at this point, this was worse than the Gobi Desert and the malaria, because this is someone else's life at risk, my responsibility on my expedition. And I just remember thinking, I laugh now and I laugh throughout the course, but I just remember this can't be happening. She kicking up and she's just getting a breath. My fear was not only if I let her go will the weight of the rucksack pull her down, it's the speed of the flow of the river, and it's the boulders that if she gets pulled down, she's going to just be bashing her head. Yeah. If she survives the rucksack getting stuck, her feet getting trapped, or the weight pulling her down, or the collision with the rocks, if she survives all of that, it's the crocodile infested. It's the most famous river for being crocodile infested. And it's nighttime and it's loud, so she can shout all she wants. And I was just like, oh my God, there's no way. If she falls, there's no way. And I don't know how, but she managed to grip on. We managed to pull her back up, and we somehow got to the other side. We split before the worst, so we passed her over to Max, and they continued. Then it was me, Lever, and the guide. The guide came back again via rope. We pulled him back so he could show us the steps. That's how intense it was. And then I slipped because my feet were so bad and blistered that I had sandals 2 sizes too big, didn't take them off because the rocks were sharp. And then I slipped. I pulled Lever in, and this guy, local, small skinny thing, has wedged himself in between a rock, gripping my hand and my forearm. I'm gripping him, I'm gripping Lever, and we're just at the hands of him pretty much. And Lever, he doesn't speak much English. He was screaming and shouting at me, don't know what he was saying. But he was kicking up from the bottom as well. And anyway, it managed, obviously my sandals I kicked off, managed to get my knee up. This guy pulled, he had crazy strength. And just as all 3 of us pulled, we managed to get up and we crossed. So Susanna was broken on the other side crying. I was like, woo, we made it. And Lever, I found out, was shouting, let me go. He was going to take wow. Yeah, it was like, when you like rock climbing, it's like cut the rope. It was almost like that. He was screaming, let me go. Even if he did speak English, I still wouldn't have let him go. But he was trying to, it was so strong that he couldn't even get his hand to ply mine off because it's the weight of the rucksack. It was terrifying, man. It was scary.
That's scary.
And we made it to that other side.
It's got to be a point, hasn't it, on that trip where you kind of want just an easy, the home comfort. You kind of right, that's it, I'm done now. I want to just have a nice normal day where no one nearly dies and there's nothing,
And just as I thought that it was a week later, I said goodbye to the rest of the team. It was now just me and Max, and we were now walking to the finish point, and that was the worst rain that they had experienced for the last 5-10 years, whatever it was. And the ground was so boggy and marshy that I lost 2 pairs of footwear. So they had survived me the whole 153 2 days or whatever it was, and the last few days to day 155 they had just disappeared, got sucked off by the mud. So my feet had sunk in, and it was just a mud everywhere. You know, trousers ripped, shirt too big because I'm so skinny at this point. I'm just like, oh, this is awful. And we had 2 days of that. Not only that, by the time we made it, the sea was too rough and the weather was too bad and the roads were too awful. We couldn't get no car, we couldn't get no helicopter. Once we had made it to the most northern point, we'd have to turn around and walk 2 days back on ourselves.
Oh my God.
So there was no champagne popping and like celebrating. It was like, yay, we made it, get a selfie. Ting, ting, yeah. Let's go back.
What is it like in that sense? Because, you know, some of these challenges that you see, you know, you see people doing unbelievable things and it's like, wow, yeah. And you get that euphoric moment where almost the world gets to see you. What is it like when it's just maybe you and someone else and it's like, hey, we've done it? Like, and it's like... It's exciting, but at the same time, I just couldn't get over... That was some of the worst terrain, you know, even other than the jungle, that was some of the worst terrain we faced on those last 2 days. So even though we made it, it's still raining and we have to go back through all of that again. You like each step here, sometimes you have to pull your leg out and you're trying to find anywhere and you can't, you're slipping, you're falling over and you're covering such low progress. We could have done it in a day if it was dry, but it took 2 days because it was so wet and so muddy and it was just a nightmare. So once we got there, we didn't even pack anything either because the bags were already heavy. We didn't take no champagne, we didn't take nothing. We took a selfie and we fucked off back to the nearest city. We were like, this is awful.
That's hilarious.
It was literally a yay moment.
When
yay,
you
great.
When you see like people cross the Atlantic and things like that, rowing, you know, you see the flares, the typical flares in the hand,
none
like
of that.
beers, and everyone's clapping.
Yeah,
and
none of that.
and then just get me out of it.
Yeah, we had that with Mission Yangtze. Mongolia, we didn't really have that. It was just my logistics manager and just a local that saw me on the last mile, and then 2 kids aged 7 that just saw a funny man walking with a big trailer, and he's got this big sort of ginger looking beard at this point because it's grown so long, and they just decided to follow. So it was 2 7-year-olds, my logistics manager, and a random guy who wanted to be part of the finish line. And it was the tiniest little it was like a miniature champagne bottle.
This on Mission Yangtze?
This was on Mongolia.
Mongolia, sorry.
Yeah, so Mongolia was that. Madagascar was absolutely nothing. And then Mission Yangtze was cool. That was a proper finish. You know, that was like hundreds of people. That was the world media. That was,
because that's what you can imagine. You know, when I was getting, like, say Tom was the one who kind of put me onto you. I'm looking about you. I'm thinking these are some amazing achievements. You assume that maybe each achievement's got this wow huge prestige, but like you say, some of it was just like, yeah, I've done it and that's it.
Yeah,
nothing else.
Yeah.
Which is mad, isn't it? To think something like a world first and like crazy ass challenges.
Yeah.
And it's nothing but a selfie done. Okay, let's fucking go home
like
now.
After you know, once we'd made it, turned around, walked those 2 days and got back to the city, that's when it sort of kicked off. That was when like the hype started and the media were there. We had a PR in place for Madagascar as well. But not with Mongolia, not with everything, of course, before Mongolia. But yeah, Mission Yangtze.
Is that what kind of then give you the idea for Mission Yangtze? Make it a big, you know, get more people involved, make it a bigger hurrah, and obviously a film got recorded along the way.
So it was kind of, it just sort of made sense. I thought, first you've got this completely solo and unsupported. So first you've got just a mate, you know, your best buddy, just doing crazy stuff, cheap, nasty, off you go, have fun, no photos, no nothing, just do it. And then you've got solo and unsupported, so doing it with no one at all. Then you've got Madagascar, which is more local. So again, like I said, there's no military background, so I didn't learn no jungle survival. All of the sort of survival that I learned was from the locals. And Madagascar, they taught me an awful lot, and so I loved again the interactivity of being with people. You know, what was it on the end of happiness is only real when shared? Was it on the end of Into the Wild, that movie, if you've seen it? And I thought, wow, that's so true.
It's a cool quote,
like solo and unsupported Mongolia was amazing. That'll also always be my first love, if you like. I loved it, and but there'll never be anyone to really talk to about that journey, you know. Whereas Madagascar, I still keep in touch. They're like Madagascar brothers of mine, you know. I still keep in touch with them over Facebook and whatnot. And then Mission Yangtze was even more so, you know. People, friends, still writing from all across, even Mexico. People joined me, and it's just like, wow, this is so cool. And so we went from solo and unsupported to Madagascar, and then they were like really good conservation, really good environmental messages with all of them as well. So I was with Madagascar, I promised to come off the mountains to drop down to these conservation centres who are doing everything to protect and preserve the unique biodiversity. So it's kind of all of the negative stories of the forests being burnt down and, you know, all of their species dying off. Yet all of their work, sometimes risky work, is always overlooked. It's never praised. It's never, you know, they're the real unsung heroes. I say what I do on my journeys. What I can do is literally just shine the light onto them and give them the notoriety that they deserve. And so I made that part of the Madagascar mission. And it was so big, we reached over 350 million people. I was invited back to Madagascar. I was announced UK ambassador for the country for tourism.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, which was insane. Even the malaria, I took a spin off that. I thought, you know, after I caught malaria, I pushed on, and then I saw the unlucky ones who can't afford to get the medication, which is the same price as a cup of coffee, cup of tea, to save their lives. They don't have that and they die. And I thought I need to start working with Malaria No More UK. They're helping to try to eradicate the disease in our
How awesome is it? All these positive things can come from your.
So it's like if I can like turn a negative to a positive, and with that I actually presented to the UK government. I was in Parliament addressing the government and talking about my own experience, but then how many other experiences I came across of people suffering with malaria, stripping of children of their education, stripping their parents from working, and so now they're suffering with malnutrition, just ripping families apart. And so I was able to address in Parliament, and it was with Annie Lennox as well, who's former of the Eurythmics. And as a whole team, as a whole joint effort of all of these different stories and the amazing work that Malaria No More UK are doing, we were able to increase the budget by 20%, which goes to £1.2 billion, I believe, which would go to help save 8 million lives and cases of malaria within the next 5 years. So it's stuff like that I would take the hit again to know that I can help be a voice or just make a small impact or help be a part of this, you know.
That's unbelievable, man. And you know what I love about that though? This come from you just thinking, fuck, I'm gonna go and like, you know, a young lad from North Wales thinking I want to go and live my life to the full. You just
mental.
think, you know, 10 years later, it's look at the impact it's had.
And I would have never believed, like going across the UK theatre tours to publishing a book, which you've also experienced. And, you know, from an idea of just, this is boring here in Old Colwyn, cycling to and from Lifeguard, I just want to do something different. From that initial thought to then what it is and making an impact, and even partnering with WWF in China, you know, and all of these amazing organisations and brands, and it's just crazy. It's crazy. And so I thought, let's open it up. Let's get people to join on Mission Yangtze. I was like, the first 6 months was to.
How long was you away for Mission Yangtze?
So that was 1.5 years I was away for altogether, almost. Maybe.
And it was to walk the length of the river. Yeah,
so that was my most ambitious one, and that was to become the first to walk the entire length of the Yangtze River. So it's from its true and scientific source in the west of China, in the Tibetan Plateau. It's over 5,100 meters high just to get to the source, just the trickle in the ground.
It's like Everest Base Camp, isn't it?
That's right. It's around the same height, similar to Everest Base Camp.
Before, can I just nip the toilet dead quick?
Yeah, of course, mate. Go. Yeah, mate, we were talking before.
Yeah, apologies, sorry.
It's all right, mate. Before we nipped to Lou, where were we? Yangtze, weren't we?
Yes.
I can't remember where.
So from the tip, so the 5,000 meter trek to the start of it.
Yeah, just to get to this, and it was weird because I was planning first from the traditional source. So it took over 2 years to plan because China's just so sensitive. It was crazy so they had to make me temporary doctor for a year, Dr. Dykes. And in order to get access to the national park, for them to create me as ambassador, and I needed to get access to the national park in order to not to the national park, to the China Conservation Organization. In order to be ambassador for them, what that would enable is for me to reach out then to the government And so I had to then go through lots of different things to get contacts to the government, for the government to sign it, and then give me access to the Three Sources National Park. And once I've got that access from the government and that, they needed to reach out to the different provinces, the authorities, to offer protection. So I had to then be on the authorities' radar, because they'll see you and they'll kick you out. I've heard stories before big name celebrities just being kicked out or being declined a visa or being deported. Concerts cancelled because they've done something wrong or said something. Poof.
Yeah, the China doesn't care, does it? Doesn't care.
I remember, mate, just off the subject a sec, I went and done a gig in Shanghai. I went out there twice to Guangzhou and Shanghai for a speaking gig for Nike.
Oh, nice.
So you think Nike, you know, all that, right?
Yeah.
True story, I'm on the train going from Liverpool to London, due to fly out that afternoon.
Yeah.
The guy from Nike rings me, says, Andy, don't get on your flight, it's been cancelled. I was like, I'm on the train now going. He said, no, it's been cancelled. He said the Chinese government have decided to that they're doing a conference in the building and they've cancelled our gig. He said, I can't say too much on the phone because they're all tapped and stuff, but I'll be in touch.
Yeah.
And that was it, just cancelled.
Yeah.
I was like, how the...
Completely normal.
Just...
Completely normal.
Well, yeah, when I eventually did go out there to do it and we spoke, he said, oh, mate, like it's the big corporations over there are so worried that the phones are tapped and everything's watched and everything, and if the government just say we want to use this building and you're not doing that, you ain't fucking doing it.
Yeah, that's it.
I was like, this is Nike, like £1 billion, don't give a fuck.
Same with the most recently, I think it was towards the end of last year, was Gucci, massive Gucci event in Shanghai. They'd been planning it for months. Jay-Z, Beyonce, everyone would be there. It was humongous. And even bigger with the Chinese celebrities who we don't know of but have like 300-400 million followers.
Yeah.
You know, makes Beyonce following look small. It's mind-blowing. The numbers out there. It's a different market. Anyway, something happened with like the CEO, or like the founder of Gucci said something on Facebook, and it was quite racial, something about chopsticks or something. That was then screenshotted, posted to Weibo, which is the Chinese sort of version of Instagram, and that just went viral.
Really?
And the government found out, boom, cancelled the Gucci. Gucci were hit so hard that Gucci had to close down a certain amount of stores in the city centre of Shanghai. Jay-Z's flights to the lot, boom, you know, and
finish.
Just like that, man.
It's mad, isn't it?
Just like that.
Here's me moaning at my flight, I don't know, doesn't it?
Mental, right? Mental. And I think he had to send out like a big public apology. I think they're still suffering, but there's, you know, they'll do all right. It's Gucci.
It's Gucci.
But it's
so a lot of
so you know, I needed to really work my relations and contacts in China for over 2 years. I've got a solid team out there, proud to say now, from production teams to book agents. We even translated my book into Mandarin, so that's been sold across the country too.
Wow.
Different organisations, different brands. I partnered up with the WWF as well. And after all of that, managed to get access to the national park, which brings me back to that point, which was the traditional source. And then I realised that the same guy who discovered the traditional source, only in 2009, corrected his wrong. For many years, he didn't feel right that was the traditional, like the true source of the Yangtze, and partnered up with NASA. And using their satellite, he was able to correct his wrong, and then he found the true and scientific source of the Yangtze River. So I was like, okay, so I've been planning this for 1.5 years, and for some reason we just didn't see this. So we had to do more extensive research. It was partnered with the Guinness Book of Records too, and it was the true and scientific. So I had to adapt the route to cater for the true and scientific, which isn't a massive distance, slightly higher, I think. But it's the longer version as well. And if you're doing 4,000, you've got to go the proper way.
My dad said this morning when I told him I was coming to chat to you, he said, how did they know for Guinness World Records? So how did they know?
So what you mean, how did they know to verify the journey?
Yeah, so you wasn't going to jump a bloody motorbike for... You know. So you've got the satellite phone. So you're backed up. So with this was the most digitally or technologically engaging expedition with satellites. So I had the route map on the website, Guinness Book. So people could track where you were going and how far and stuff.
Not only is it the altitude, not only is it the current location, it's so accurate that you will be there within 5 meters somewhere.
Oh wow!
It gets down to the 5 meters.
So you ain't jumping a motorbike for 5 miles down the road.
Speed. So that was the crucial one with Guinness Book, is the speed.
Yeah.
So every 5 minutes for 352 days, it would send off a tracker for a whole year of my exact speed every 5 minutes.
Jesus.
So yeah, even if I jumped on a little push bike, they got me. Yeah, there's going to be some jig, and I had to send it them weeks in advance as well, because it takes them a long time to verify. In fact, they locked it down. They had first initially said that they've stopped doing world firsts. Guinness Book, they only do like fastest or highest or whatnot, and they've stopped world firsts now because it's getting too tough, too difficult. But with the hype that we were building in China, they reopened up, so I believe we might have the last, unless some huge name I guess comes along, and then they'll open it again. But it was because of the marketing and the mass. They were like, right, let's do it and close it down again. So they did manage to monitor this one, partnered up, and we got that. But yeah, and so that was.
Are you literally walking? It might sound like a stupid question, but are you walking literally alongside the river?
Yeah. So I've got to be as close to the river as I can, but the river cuts through like V-shaped valleys where you've got landslide terrain blocking the rivers, flooded whole communities where tens of thousands have been evacuated. So with that stuff comes a detour, because I can't get on any boat. And even if I use a boat to cross a river, you've got to slightly go diagonally back on yourself to make up for the distance, which is sometimes only 100, 200 meters that you would have skipped.
I see.
So you've got to be diagonally upstream so that you still, you know what I mean? So it's very sensitive, and it's every 5 minutes, so there's no getting. And so sometimes it was detoured by 5 days. Sometimes the river would be blocked. It would be V-shaped that I'd need to navigate and climb up the mountains and sort of traverse the knife edge ridge until it's safe to drop back down, and that could send me from the tropics of like palm trees, snakes and spiders, further up the mountains to like this, it's snowing. You know, it's mental. It's mental.
I remember you saying in an interview, like, there was a point where there was a guy who was saying, like, just be careful of the wolves or something, and you couldn't understand obviously what he was saying. But you were tracked by wolves for like 3-4 days or something crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah. So this was on I think week 3 or week 4. So it was me and a videographer. He was Nails as well, Kyle Oberman, and he's fluent in Chinese, fluent in Mandarin. I could only speak very basic. But these guys we came across were Tibetan, and they didn't speak Chinese, they spoke Tibetan. And so pretty much all of the dialects were ever changing wherever I was. And so there was no communication, so they sort of stop us and they're like talking to us, and we didn't really know. I kind of thought that Kyle maybe understood what they were saying, but found out after he was like, I don't know what they were saying, and like they spoke too fast, different dialect, and you know, speaking Tibetan. And anyway, we thought nothing of it. We cracked on. But he filmed all of this, of course. He was filming my reaction to what they're saying. Clueless face. Like, okay, thank you. She needs ITN. Like, going off, walking, waving goodbye. And it was only 6 months later that we found out that what they were saying is only yesterday, down that valley where you two were about to walk, a lady was killed by a pack of wolves. We didn't know that. So anyway, we crack on. And for the next few days, I think the next 2 days, we were followed by a pack of wolves. And they were only a distance between, or we were always only ever one side of the mountain away from them. They normally cover such big distances than humans cover, and they were just on our tail for a good
just with that same,
we could just hear the howling. At first, we were just like, it's pretty creepy, but it was awe-inspiring as well. Them and their environment just howling. It was literally, the night as well was, I forgot what they call it in Chinese, but it was like full moon. It's where they celebrate. So you take yourself a little moon cake. So we packed a moon cake, and they have festivals where it's a bright full moon. For only this one particular month they celebrate it, and you eat your moon cake. So we're there eating moon cake, full moon, wolves howling. Didn't know that they were after us. Just like, wow, that's nice. But then we put it together. It was only when the editor had told us 6 months later. I was like, that makes sense.
When they translated it.
Mental, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unbelievable, that, isn't it?
It was scary. The first 2 months were really sketchy. Like, even before we made it to the source of the Yangtze, we'd lost 4 members of the team before day 1. Altitude sickness. My film crew bailed because of fear, so they camped up one night and they hated it. They were like, put their tent really close to mine. We're constantly checking in, because a local had said, only this very morning we saw a bear right where you were camping. Don't tell us that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I told them that that's the thing. There's bears, there's wolves. It's going to be -20. They'll be hit by snow blizzards. You might be eaten. What I try to do is scare people looking to join me, especially the dangerous scenario.
Of course, yeah.
Like I was talking about with the mind, the training beforehand, where I terrify myself. If I didn't tell them something and they joined me and they were like, oh, I didn't know that, and now they're freaked and now they want to leave and they can't because there's no evacuation, then you're screwed, really,
Yeah.
But if I tell them something really scary and they choose to bail before they've started, then
It's
good,
fine,
they've stopped whilst they can, because there's no stopping.
Yeah.
So that was my method, and when they joined me, I don't know, they knew that was, the danger, but they still freaked. And luckily, I had a good team. I did have the right evacuation plans in place for everyone.
What you're saying about the huge team, how much does something like this cost? A huge, a year-long operation, I mean.
Well, it depends, because the logistics were through the production team. So it's kind of like logistics, fixes, and all contacts came through the production team, because the production team want the expedition to go ahead because they want to film it.
Of course.
Make money off the back of it, once they've produced it and sold it. And so a lot of it came from the production team. But then there was social media as well. I had, 10, 11 different Chinese social media channels that all trumped my Western ones.
Really? Yeah. So everyone was just like,
it was bigger news out in China. Yeah, we'd have people joining. I'd rocked up in Wuhan, they had this massive banner. It was 3 or 4 stories high inside a massive shopping mall, welcoming me, and book signing. We had book signing events, we had presentations, we had people joining. We organised rock climbing, belaying along the journey. Then
so you're like a superstar over there then?
Well, it just opened up. I'd say Mission Yangtze was pretty well known out there,
Jesus.
And that's a big fucking country, if it's well known out there, you're thinking
it got so big at one point in Chongqing that I was contacted by GQ to do a shoot with Adidas, wearing the Adidas clothing and the Wuji clothing. So I was like, Wuji, what's that? And they were like, it's Jet Li's new brand. And you're going to be shooting with Jackie Huang, who's a massive movie star and martial arts expert. And it was, they flew, which was weird, because I was mid-expedition. I got myself to Chongqing, so I was like this big red eyes, big wild man, hairy face, rucksack on back. And then I was all of a sudden on this first class flight just for the 2 days over to Shanghai with this makeup artist, this stylist, awesome, doing a photo shoot, and then straight back to Chongqing only 2 days later to get back to the Yangtze and continue back in this. So it was like, the contrast of that,
I can imagine,
from surviving on the Yangtze to then all of a sudden quick photo shoot with massive names and brands of the land, back, drop you back on the Yangtze, back to surviving, back to grinding. It was crazy.
Jesus.
So it was, and then that boosted out even more so, and even the people joining. This one guy called Seven, he's like a big, like a YouTuber, but they have, what was their Douyin, and so he goes live on Douyin, and he's live to 1.3 million. For 7 hours straight, and he's like, if it drops under 1 million, I tend to cancel. What? Because 1 million isn't enough, right?
That is madness, the numbers, isn't it?
Crazy numbers. So the production team, we had the book agents and whatnot, and the different partnerships, and I guess they just helped to promote and fire things up and had my back. I had one of the biggest law firms cover me as well, because I needed some protection as well. It was
that's awesome, that.
And what was scary as well is before we even started, because there were 2.5 months of being delayed of getting to the source due to sensitivities and due to losing 4 members, my Tibetan guide who was there on the trip, he was mainly there to get me off the mountains if I suffered with altitude sickness. But it turned out he was the guy suffering with altitude sickness. He was vomiting, bleeding from the nose, and I had to get him off the mountains. So because of all of these delays now, and again, I wouldn't start the Mission Yangtze till another 2 weeks, and we've not even made it to the source yet. That most of the team was saying, this is getting too dodgy now. You're already going to face -20, but if you leave it any longer, you're going to be walking in the depth of winter at -40. And the bears are already there. It's the worst possible season, because the bears are coming off the mountains because it's too cold. They're looking for food and calories before they go into hibernation. So they're actively rocking up into communities, killing people as well. And I always had that healthy mindset of they're going to leave me alone if I leave them alone. And the locals just were showing me otherwise via photos and videos.
Wow.
And I always say, if the locals panic, you should definitely be panicking,
100%.
isn't it? There's nothing quite like local knowledge. So this was all on my mind again, but it'd been over 2 years now, and I believed in my training, the preparation, the previous experience. I believed I could get off the mountains before the depth of winter, and believed I had the relevant tools to hopefully keep the bears at bay that I found out were actually pretty pointless. But at that time I was like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it this year. And if I chose to delay it, COVID-19 would have hit midway through.
Thank God for that then, yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Imagine being locked down when you just...
I would have been
anything.
deported. I would have been sent home. And for the Guinness book, if you leave the country or if you stop your expedition, they allow a maximum of 2 weeks out of the country. So then obviously it's not about the record, but that's a good motive as well.
Yeah.
So even if I left and I was then going to go back to China once this is all over, once the whole COVID-19 is all over, it's disqualified.
And it wouldn't feel the same, would it, leaving the country and then coming back?
Not for that long.
No.
It's you know, and yeah. And so I just stayed dogged with my decision. I was just like, no.
So when did you actually finish it then?
I finished August last year.
Wow.
Bloody hell.
So yeah.
And it finishes in where? Shanghai, is it?
Shanghai, yeah. So it pours out. It's almost 10 miles wide at that point. Longest river to run through a single country, 4,000 miles. I remember being at the source, being there. It's just a small trickle, and you can step over it. And I'm like, I'm going to be following you. I'm going to be watching you grow. I'm going to be seeing all of the diversity, culture, terrain, weather systems, everything that you cut through until you pour into the sea.
Jesus, there's that
Something
huge
weird
dam, isn't there?
That's special when you say it like
the
that.
massive dam, Three Gorges Dam.
Three
as
Gorges,
well.
yeah, that's it, yeah.
That we had to navigate over, detour around again.
Bloody hell.
Lots of detours, and before the 4th month, we'd lost 10 members of 16, I think, up to that point that joined. Like strictly like crew or photographer or guides. And at that point, that's when I locked down the expedition. I thought, this is getting too scary. Just constantly invite people joining them, boom, sending them, or abandoning the expedition, or evacuating them. Altitude sickness, fear of wildlife, injury. My photographer from the UK flew out to get some shots, and he was with me. He was planning to join me for 2-3 weeks, but after 6 hours on day number 1, sent home.
6 hours.
6 hours. Yeah, he hates it when I remind him. No, I don't really. And yeah, pretty much massive landslide, huge landslide, which is on an awkward part of the cliff where you can detour, but it's going to cost another few days. And if we get around this one, is there another landslide? And again, this is my expertise. Photography is his, so it's kind of like him being just as I would be like if I had this camera and I had to get all of these shots. I'd be a little bit clueless with settings and whatnot. He was just aware of his depth, and I just gave him the option. 2 different options. These, do you feel comfortable and capable, and don't lie to me, because I'll be able to. Unfortunately, when I do find out that you did lie to me, it will be too late to do something. And I don't want it to fall on my responsibility.
Yeah, of course,
so whatever you make, get rid of pride, get rid of ego. It is the right decision, whatever you decide. And he just wasn't feeling right, wasn't feeling comfortable. And I was really struggling to get over it as well. And I just covered like a month of crazy terrain. And he had just joined freshly, so yeah. And he's got a wife and kid back at home, so yeah, he got himself back. It was the right decision.
For these reasons, by the end of it, was that you look back and you go, just for the amount of challenges and everything, was that the hardest challenge? Despite obviously the malaria and then nearly dying and heat exhaustion.
I would say there wasn't a near death on Mission Yangtze that was as serious as the heat stroke or the malaria, but there could have been. And I like to think, because of experience and because of taking my time and realizing that this is a big expedition now, don't try to smash out this year. And I did. It was 352 days, but there were many days where I stopped, many weeks at different cities, because it was all about the interactivity. It was about capturing content. It was about filming like the WWF or communities, or even like being welcomed in and teaching how to cook these certain delicacies, to eating little pasha worms, little rodents from the Yangtze River bank, to even the urban freestyle breakdancing of the younger generation, to the older generation who are the bang bang men who transport stuff still like the old school days. And so it was a mix of absolutely everything. So I just enjoyed myself more, and I sat back, I observed the challenges and difficulties. I made the right decisions on whether we get him evacuated, whether we continue. And yeah, just more professional this time round.
What a year to look back. You go, when you're 90 years of age, and you go, oh, I spent one year of my life doing this. Like, it's fucking cool, that, isn't it?
It was wild. Yeah. It was.
And it's literally a year, isn't it? What, 10 days short of a year or something?
It was
mental.
Have you got anything that you're planning that you can talk about, or?
I'm planning a lot.
Of course you are.
Again, Mission Yangtze was just the warm up. We're just getting started, but there's a big team now in Los Angeles as well. So I'm working with ever since that Joe Rogan podcast. Actually, I've got a big time agent.
How did that come about? Did you reach out to them? They reach out to you?
That was just from the press, from the world news. It was sort of like, it was the One Show, it was the BBC. Then it was my PR that sent an email out to them as well, and they reached out fairly fast and said, what's your availability like in January? This was December, so we had reached out first time, we heard nothing, and then they reached out again, and then they replied, and it was like, what's your availability for January? We were now in December, so it was like, whoa.
So you're still out there doing it then?
No, this was a good few months after I'd completed it.
Okay,
3 months after, was it 4 months after, something like that? And and they replied, and it was a case of, well, let's do it.
Just jump on a flight.
Yeah, flew myself out there. A good mate of mine from Wales flew out with me too. He's a huge Joe Rogan fan. Rocked up in the studio and
what was that like? Did you listen to him beforehand and stuff? Did you?
Yeah, I had actually listened to a few of the podcasts as well on Mission Yangtze. I think it was the Tyson Fury, Kevin Hart, Mike Tyson, a couple of others, Yeah. And I knew that was a huge platform as well.
Huge,
it sort of dwarfs the One Show, and it sort of dwarfs BBC World News as well, really. It gets it out there, but in terms of the engagement and the following and, the kudos that comes with that, I was just like, flew straight out there. He was super cool. Crazy studios as well.
Really, here we are in a pub.
It is cool wherever you go, but his studio was like salt baths. He had like this archery, this crossbow, which was all laser driven, so it's a screen like 30 meters away, and a deer will run across the screen. It'll show you the laser point where you hit the deer. He's got his park there. He's got this big gym. It's insane.
He's a nice guy and stuff.
Cool guy. Even after the podcast was about 2.5 hours long. But even after that, we were talking for a long time.
Really,
yeah. So that was.
Did you notice like a huge like? Obviously, we're not fussed about people like followers and that sort of thing. But did you just see a huge after that episode? It was like just clicked and like just went mental.
Yeah. No, it did. Can't say too much, but I was then contacted by The Rock's agent.
Really?
Yeah. And I flew back out to LA for the second time in February. And then things are now kickstarting over there in LA that we're working on, so I can't mention it too much, but we're working, Mission Yangtze, we've sold that will be played international on a very big international broadcaster, big channel. Should be able to mention that in the next month or two, I hope, because they want exclusivity, they want to talk about it first type of thing. So we got that, potentially a second book, maybe. We're seeing if it's worth pushing forward for that second book or just cracking it on with the next thing, which will be with either channels or another big expedition. So there's a few different options that we're toying with at the minute.
We're lucky we got you on when we did, mate. You're going big time.
It's I think we all are, aren't we? You just got to stay humble, keep grinding as well is one thing that it doesn't matter what you do or where you go, you've got to keep the workload up, otherwise you can bail, and you can't sort of focus on one achievement or something in the past that you've done. You've got to keep focus on the next thing as well, isn't it? So with me, it's kind of like, forget about Mongolia and Madagascar, Mission Yangtze. I'm already on to the next, but I enjoy talking about that because that's where it all started. That's the roots. I enjoy talking more.
Fair play to me, because me and I've spoke to Tom a lot about it. I've done it in the past. I've achieved some pretty cool things, but then I have rested on my laurels at certain times, and it's good to get that fire lit again, to listen to people going,
you've still got so much out there to do, so much to see. It's like when people say, it's such a small world. You're so wrong. It's just because you're on the beaten track. Get off the beaten track and you find it's a big world, right? Still lots to see, lots to do, and again, lots of personal potential to be unlocked.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
And I think that's what it is.
I think we're going to get kicked out here because it's nearly 3 o'clock. But I just want to say, mate, honestly, thank you so much for nearly like 2.5 hours of your time.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for coming all the way from
North
Wales.
So fucking cool, man. It really, surely be inspiring for everyone, mate. It has been for me. It's been fucking awesome.
Appreciate that. And you guys too. We'll keep in touch.
100%.
We'll do another one in the future.
Yeah, definitely,
awesome,
mate. Yeah.
Wicked.
I must just say thanks for the Phoenix Hotel as well for giving us this space because we're not in our usual spot. So thank you, mate. You're a star.
Appreciate that, guys.